The City of Oconomowoc for March 3rd to order. Has it been appropriately noticed?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
Everybody please stand, remove your hats if you have them on, and for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please.
Alderman Shaw.
Here.
Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Zwart.
Here.
Alderman Stray. Alderman Kavieski.
Here.
Alderman Rogers.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Item on the agenda are public hearing continuations from February 18th. I'm going to turn this over to Attorney Riffle for the, to start what's going on, and then we'll take public comment. If anybody has anything they'd like to say, please fill out a blue card, and I'll call your name when we get to it. Stan?
Just turn my phone off. All of you do the same. So when we last met, we had a public hearing. We closed the public hearing. We reopened the public hearing, and there was additional information presented, and we then held the public hearing over to tonight. The reason being that we are acting under the provisions of Act 67 as it relates to conditional use permits. And I want to remind the Common Council again, a couple of things. Number one, you must rely on information that is presented, evidence that's presented at the public hearing and the public hearing alone. There's, again, been a ton of information in and out, but base any decision you have on evidence that's presented at the public hearing. That's number one. Number two, it has to be based upon objective standards that are in our ordinances. In other words, we cannot go outside of our ordinances with regard to the standards. They have to be objective, and if the petitioner meets the standards that are in our ordinances, then the new law that was dreamt up by our friends in Madison says that we grant the permit. So I want those two things to be clear in your mind. So with that, after the public hearing, as you recall, there was a ton of information that was presented to staff and for the review of the Common Council. And that information was reviewed by staff and by the Common Council, and a new draft conditional use taking into account the information that was presented has been prepared for consideration by the Common Council tonight. And we wanted to walk through the provisions of the new draft that was based upon careful consideration of the information that was brought to the Common Council's attention as a result of the last Common Council meeting. So the council has before it, and I believe it is available to the public, it was online, and probably most of you have downloaded it and looked through it. The petitioner has looked through it. The petitioner will be presenting, I believe, a couple of objections to it at the beginning, or when I'm done with this public hearing, my portion of the public hearing, and then the public will be invited to chime in, and the mayor will set the ground rules for that. So the substantive revisions to this proposed conditional use permit that are different than the original draft, we start actually at conditions, paragraph 3, and this is sort of a theme here. There was a lot of objection to the non-athletic events. And so the way that it was set up in this proposed drafted conditional use permit is all of the athletic events are permitted as a matter of right. And this is only pertaining to the outside stuff. I don't think there was any concern with regard to the stuff that was going on inside of the facility that is there. So athletic events, good to go. Non-athletic events, each and every one is proposed under this conditional use permit will require a special use permit. So it's a very clear black and white line of demarcation. You want to have a Girl Scout troop out there, you come in for a conditional use permit, or for a special use permit, but unless they're going to be playing softball or something. So athletic events, good to go. non-athletic events, special use permit. There may be some discussion as to whether or not you really want to go through this as a common council each and every time that church wants a picnic out there. But that will be a topic of discussion that I believe will be brought up by the applicant. Hours of operation, this proposed CU has the hours of operation from 7 to 10, but if with the revision of the potential revision to the ordinance could go into play, that would allow for, in the event of inclement weather, for it to be going beyond that. I understand that the applicant wants that to be for athletic events till 11 p.m. and the same, condition related to weather events. That'll be discussion as well. The next is tailgating is prohibited, period, end of story. Lighting, there's a provision that is proposed that they have to meet the plans as presented. There are some specifics with regard to the height of the light poles being not higher than 20 feet, which is consistent with the restrictions in the industrial park there. Noise. There's a provision that requires the operation to be compliant with the city ordinance. It has to be recalibrated to correct any non-compliance within 48 hours. Because if you recall, the sound expert indicated that it has the ability to be recalibrated in the event we have exceedances of the ordinance requirements there. There's another provision here that says that in the event they can't meet those standards, then they would have to bring in a plan to look at putting in sound barriers or some other type of noise attenuation measures that would achieve compliance. There is a provision that says that the sound system installed will be directional to the stadium seating and be in substantial conformity with what they presented in their sound study or their sound plan, the Tulaski report. There's a provision here that was requested by one alderperson that says that the neighboring residential areas will not experience intermittent or impulsive decibel levels above 55 decibels. I'm sure that will be a topic of discussion, and there will be some consideration as to whether or not that is consistent with our ordinance. Because as I said before, I'm very concerned anytime that we have an ordinance in place that that's an objective standard. That's the most objective standard you could possibly have, is a decibel level, that we do not run afoul of that. So I'm sure that there will be discussion with regard to that. Street parking, we had talked about the prospect of putting into place parking ordinances that would restrict parking in that area. There are provisions here that would eliminate street parking during stadium events. I represent the Village of West Milwaukee, which, if you know the Village of West Milwaukee, is right across the street from Miller Park. Soon to be whatever, AmFam Park, what are they gonna call it?
Something like that.
Whatever. They have this exact type of ordinance, no parking during stadium events. So it's very, very doable. And so there's a provision here that says there won't be any parking on the street during stadium events. And there's a further provision that says that there will be signs on site in the parking lot itself that says you can't park on the street. The traffic management plan simply opens it up that if we got problems either from the city or the DOT that things aren't working out as predicted by the management plan, they're going to have to revise it, and they're going to have to live with whatever restrictions that come from a revised traffic management plan. and on we go. With regard to the alcohol license, we want, in this conditional use permit, there will be a requirement that the applicant submit a responsible alcohol consumption plan, which has been done in a variety of other facilities of this nature. There have been discussion that no sales be permitted after the 7th inning of baseball games, and reasonable times sort of concomitant with that during other athletic events. So like if you had a football game there, like at Lambeau Stadium, they cut off sales after the 3rd quarter, which is, I guess, the 7th and a half inning. Not even a chuckle? God. I believe that there's going to be some pushback on that, but we'll talk about that. No fireworks, period. I mean, obviously, they can come in and they can try to argue later on, but right now, no fireworks. Any signage, there will be no flashing, pulsating, or rotating signs. Landscaping will be required on the western side of the ballpark. And that plan will be submitted to the staff, and they will have to approve it. Security, applicant shall provide private security for all Northwoods games and large athletic and non-athletic events, even though we're gonna have a kick at that every non-athletic event, because they can't have a non-athletic event without a special use permit unless that changes tonight. So then there's a provision that says 1 year from if this gets issued, the applicant will come back in and we will talk about whether or not they have done a good job or not done a good job, and there you go. So those are the revisions substantively to the conditional use permit that was originally discussed. It is all in reaction and in consultation with you as the public, bringing to our attention, common council's attention, information that was concerning to you. I think that it reflects very, very clearly a careful consideration of the information that was brought here tonight, or last time, and considered in the last 2 weeks. I will say that what you don't see in here tonight is any reflection of any specific treatment related to the turf. It does require the applicant to meet all requirements of city ordinances which are in play. Those city ordinances deal with stormwater drainage and stormwater quality. And you will hear, I think, during somebody that there was a meeting last night of the joint stormwater district that considered and approved the stormwater plan. They will have to meet all state and federal and local requirements as it relates to stormwater drainage. But I will hearken back to my original statement that in the event you have objective standards in place, and you have objective standards in place that are put upon you by the feds and the state, and I would highly recommend that you follow those standards and don't deviate from those standards, because we are, again, under Act 67. It's a conditional use permit, and if they prove they can meet your standards that are in place, the state has indicated that you shall grant the permit. So that is my overview of the revisions to this. I am certainly here to answer any questions that you might have in that regard.
Thank you, Stan. Does the applicant, would you like to make a presentation to the changes, or?
Good evening. Again, my name is Tim Newbert. I represent Blue Ribbon Baseball Diamond Club. My partners, Sonny and Tom Kelnick, are here as well. So thank you, Attorney Riffle. We did have an opportunity to look at the revised conditional use permit last week, Friday. And, you know, again, we do believe that as it's written today, we have done our very best to try to find compromise that will provide the community, you know, with a permit that meets some of the concerns, many of the concerns that have been presented to you over the course of the last several weeks. With that being said, it's safe to say that this particular project, this is a big project from a monetary perspective. Quite frankly, it's something that's probably way more than what you traditionally find for an athletic facility like this. But as a function of the architectural requirements and what ultimately we want to see happen here, this project it's costly. So when we talk about the conditional use permit, we are in agreement with everything that was just discussed, for the exception of really 4 items. So when you look at paragraph or section 4, the non-athletic events, ultimately we without question can understand and appreciate that the biggest concern would be any of these large events, very specific to, most importantly, concerts and the sound that would be emitted from that. But the idea of coming to the council and asking for a special permit for any non-athletic event would really be restrictive from our perspective. At the end of the day, we're not even 100% sure what potentially might come to our particular project, but in no way or shape or form are we looking to use this as a facility to create disturbance. But if there is an opportunity for a corporation to come and use our facility for a training exercise that may involve 25 people, the idea of having to come again before you for a conditional use permit, you know, would really hamstring us. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to create a business model that affords us the ability to be successful. So what we're asking for is some flexibility as it pertains to non-athletic events. I do believe that we presented to all of you a suggestion. It doesn't have to exactly read like this. But what we're asking for is to readdress the non-athletic events by more or less stating any concert or musical act that would in addition require any acoustical equipment would of course require a special permit. In addition, any other event and using a barometer of attendees is something that we would potentially like to work with you on by saying that anything that would generate an attendance greater than 1,500 people would require a special use permit. And again, the special use permit then is ultimately put back on you, and it's ultimately your decision based on what we propose, if that's something, you know, that you approve or you don't approve. But in the end, we're just asking for some flexibility. It's a function of cost, it's a function of our investors, it's a function of making sure that we have, again, the wherewithal to be successful, and asking to be treated like any other business. With that being said, hours of operation, we were in front of the Planning Commission before the 18th meeting. They were willing to provide us with an extension. When we were here on the 18th, we asked for the extension predominantly as a function of weather-related delays. That verbiage was written in the cup. We are asking for a 1-hour extension. To be brutally honest, for just sporting-related events, we are asking for it to be open for that 1 additional hour. Predominantly, and the main reason is that if we have the ability to rent that out to a soccer organization, an adult men's softball group, or whatever it may be, that 1 extra hour provides us with that additional revenue. We don't necessarily believe that it's excessive, but it's without question something that we're asking for. So 1 hour, only for sports-related activities. In addition, and this is something that maybe we can discuss, the way we interpreted the noise verbiage, and if I understand this, Jason, is the intermittent sound ordinance states that the maximum cannot exceed, we thought, 60 decibels between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Is that correct? That's how we read it.
Jason, is that correct, Jason?
So if that is truly correct, we're asking for the conditional use permit to adhere to your current sound ordinance and not necessarily something that's more than what your sound ordinance says, meaning that 55 decibels is what you're asking when the sound ordinance between the hours of 7 and 10 is the maximum is 60. So in essence, you're asking us to reduce it by 5 additional decibels, even though your sound ordinance says 60 is the threshold. So we're just asking for us to be able to adhere to the sound ordinance. In addition to that, the only comment we'll make in regards to the street parking is that we will do exactly what the conditional use permit states. Just so everybody understands that we don't have the authority to enforce that as a function of it's not our road. The last item, again, in the name of just providing us with some flexibility, we would, of course, like to, first of all, the alcohol consumption, there will be a consumption policy that we will have to write. There are definitely things that we will include in there. It's in no way, shape, or form our intentions, as we've stated from the very beginning, to create an environment where this is just nothing but a free-for-all. I know my partner was just recently down in Arizona, and something that we could potentially include is anybody that comes to a counter and asks for a beverage, they would only be allotted two beverages. I think that's kind of the industry standard. But with that being said, what we are asking for is instead of the 7th inning, we're asking for the 8th inning. Our project is something that we believe is different than what you find in Major League Baseball. We're not promoting alcohol, we're not allowing tailgating, we're not necessarily waving this flag that says, yes, come and get all crazy. Here again, it gives us an extra hour. If you look at some of the other Northwoods teams, the ordinance that they adhere to is the 8th inning. So we're asking for a compromise. You're asking for the 7th. We would like to have it not, to basically not have it exist at all. So our compromise would be a request to have it end at the 8th inning. And then at the last item is just in regards to 1-year review. We're asking to meet with staff and provide a report on what occurred over the course of the past year. At the end of the day, this has been quite an exercise of sorts, in that the conditions that have been put on this particular project, I will be honest, we didn't necessarily anticipate this when we started this. But we can appreciate the fact that, again, there are concerns and there are people that want to be protected. We believe that we've been good stewards and partners. Without question, this is built on community. I was up here on the 18th. We need your support. We're not here to not abide by what you're asking, and we believe that we've found some excellent compromise. We, without question, regardless of how this works out tonight, we're going to very, very professionally ask for some decision, because we need to bring this to a close, I think, for everybody's benefit. We believe in this project. We believe this is an incredible opportunity for your city, and we believe that it can do a lot more than just to play a particular game of baseball or a sporting event. We do have somebody here that can speak on artificial turf. I know that will again be something that we can discuss. He will speak as a citizen, but he is here representing the material that we're looking to work with, and I just mentioned that for your reference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open it up for public comment now, and we're going to abide by the rules we had last time. 3 minutes, max. We're going to work on it better. 3 minutes, and do not duplicate. And since we did hear from a lot of these people at the meeting 2 weeks ago, please don't go over the same thing you did 2 weeks ago. Okay. First person we'll call is Matt O'Neill.
Question, Mayor?
Yes.
Are we able to ask questions as they're giving testimony during this period? Or do you want to wait to bring them back up?
We'll wait. I want to get through the list. Okay. Matt, go ahead.
Good evening. As I said last time, I represent citizens in both Oconomowoc and in Summit, as well as local business owners. And I want to address 4 things tonight. And one is the propriety of what the council has done in the last 2 weeks in response to what was given to the council. The second is the importance of using this process as it's being used, which is to take this opportunity at the beginning of a project to put in place protections that are necessary. 3, to talk about, there's still a loose end out here, I think, or 2 that should be addressed, or at least are addressed in these conditional use permits. And then 4th, I think you need to stand firm on that final one-year review part of the CUP. So first, I want to say, this is the way the process is supposed to work. I was really happy with what happened after the last meeting, and I will say one of the first things that happened was all behind the scenes. On behalf of one of my clients, we were able to work with the Paps Farms development folks on redoing the revised modifications and variances that are being done to the existing covenants, and that was brought to a very acceptable conclusion by my client. So again, that was kudos to the developers for stepping up. This council has its statutory charge under 6223 sub 7 sub DE, what Mr. Riffle refers to more elegantly as Act 67, the ability to require an applicant to agree to meet all of the requirements and conditions that are in your ordinances and that you put in a conditional use permit. Your own ordinances 17.8061B require this council to make sure that any development protects against negative impacts on public health, safety, and welfare of the community. 17.8061C requires the applicant to satisfy you that it will not create undesirable impacts on nearby properties, the environment, or the community as a whole. And I think those were all the things that went into what happened within the last couple of weeks. And so I think the council is to be commended upon what it's done and what it is prepared to consider tonight in the form of the revised conditional use permit. And I want to say that's my second point. The council should stick to what it's done in the last 2 weeks with respect to those conditions. I heard a couple of them being questioned by the developer, and I understand the shoe's on the other foot now with the council saying, here's what we want, and they've got a couple problems with it, and I think you ought to stick to your guns on this. This is the one chance you get to put these protections in place. Once the CUP is granted, the rights that go along with that CUP become vested in the property owner. You can't call them back in, you can't take them back. There's not another chance to do this except right now. All of the testimony last time, and I was impressed with it, in favor of the development, was in favor of baseball. People want baseball, and why not? I live a couple miles from Miller Park. It's terrific to have and to be able to go to a game. And I gather this is pretty good competition. If the number of people that were drafted into major leagues, I think it was 237 in some last time frame, it's going to be impressive baseball. All of the conditions that have been added to the conditional use permit from February 18th to today are completely consistent with the baseball use. 100% of them. Not one will limit in any way, shape, or form the ability to play those baseball games. And so I think, again, the responsiveness that the council showed to the concerns that were expressed last time, all of those basically address concerns that should not be presented at all by the 36 Northwoods games and hopefully some more if they have playoffs. The requirement for a special use permit or temporary use permit for non-athletic events, I think is a very good, solid idea, and you shouldn't wander away from it for 1 second, and I'll tell you why. And that's because the entire submission about this ballpark was initially about baseball. And then on January 30th of 2020, there was an amendment that was slid right in towards the end saying there might be some other events. And this all has to do with substantial evidence here today, and what you don't have any substantial evidence of is what those other events would be, how many people they would draw, what type of events they would be, what traffic it would create. And I'll give you an example. A concert.
You've gone over the 3 minutes.
Sorry, I'll wrap up quick. I want to give an example, and that's a concert. If in fact there was going to be seating on the field, you would have more than 2,500 people. You have a parking lot that's only designed for 2,700 people, and it would require them to come in here and present to you how the traffic would work, where the extra cars would go, how the people would get there, all those things. And you've had that before you before in the Harley-Davidson permits, and I looked over those before coming here tonight, and that is exactly the way the process is supposed to work. And it's not hard, it's a couple of pages, you just have to address what you're doing. So I would say stick with that, and I also think it's extremely important to keep that item number 29, requiring that 1-year review after the actual baseball and everything starts, because that, again, reserves to you that opportunity to address issues as they happen and as they occur. And I think, again, I want to commend you on doing an excellent job of considering all of the very heartfelt testimony and evidence that was submitted last time.
Thank you. Jason Latch.
330 Thorough Drive. Just real quick, I'm a downtown business owner, resident, and am in favor of whatever business is healthy for our city, our kids, and to bring new people into our city to promote our businesses and potentially another hotel. That's it.
Thank you. Michael Chrisman.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mike Chrisman. I'm the president of Exonia Knights Baseball, and I just wanted to speak on behalf of our organization, being an outliner of Oconomowoc. We are definitely a feeder program to the high school at this age, or at this point, I should say. And we've already signed a letter of intent to bring all of our youth teams over to Blue Ribbon Complex for our indoor baseball facilities, and also to do some outdoor facilities at the Northwoods League Stadium as well. I think it's a great thing for the community, not only the town of Exonia, but for the surrounding communities. I know if it doesn't go in Oconomowoc, it's gonna go somewhere, and Exonia would love to have it. I think it's a gold mine, a great opportunity to get more youth baseball in this area. There's a rich history of youth baseball in Oconomowoc, and this only will add to that, in my opinion. And again, it's only 4 months out of the year. You know, baseball season's very short here in Oconomowoc, so it wouldn't impact traffic patterns in the winter months, so I don't think that would be such a huge traffic burden. It's away from downtown traffic. It is on the other side of 94, so I don't think that would impact a lot of the citizens that do business in the downtown area. So just speaking on behalf of the Exonia Knights, we are definitely in favor of Blue Ribbon Baseball. Thanks.
Thank you. Sheila Bartolos.
Lower this just a little bit. Hello, everyone. My name is Sheila Bertolis, and I live at 37434 Indian Mound Road, Silver Lake and Summit. I wanted to say that I am actually against the Blue Ribbon Baseball Cup to allow general outdoor recreation. I am not against if this would go through. I agree that the hours should be limited to 10 o'clock and only past 10 o'clock in weather delays. I want to say that I don't, and I'm not against baseball, and I do enjoy the sport. I just do not agree that it's in the right location. I live on Silver Lake. My husband and I have been living there for 24 years. And just like the village website in Summit says, it's a quiet, rural, and lake country setting near urban amenities. The lake country location is near state parks. We're near Milwaukee and Madison for professional sporting events. We moved out here in Summit for several reasons. I drive to Brown Deer every day, 2 hours each way to go to work every day, and I come home to this beautiful lake country area. I enjoy the peaceful, quiet, and rural lake community, nature out my back door, being able to ride a bike and walk right outside my back door, swim in a clean lake and drink out of a clean well. No noise at night while sitting at a bonfire in my backyard and being able to see the stars. Who doesn't like that? But I did want to ask a few questions, a few things that I haven't really heard yet because I wasn't at the last meeting. So DCE had mentioned several times that children, grade school, age up through high school, will be able to use the stadium. I've heard that this is difficult to get field time for many kids in Oconomowoc and Summit. DCE's been telling everyone that their kids of all ages will be able to play on their fields. So just a couple questions. Will DCE charge kids to play on the field? Grade school, high school, all various ages? If so, we haven't really heard how much that charge will be. If there is a charge, are they going to put it in writing so people know about it? If there is a charge, will various baseball organizations have to run fundraisers to raise enough money to play? I feel that the whole truth really needs to be out there, because I think that a lot of times I've been hearing that they've been just saying that anyone can play on the stadium. And it's an actual money-making industry, so they need to make money, so I get that. But thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Jeff Rockleader? I'm sorry if I said it wrong, but
It's rock teacher.
rock teacher.
You made it a little more complicated than it needed to be.
As long as she writes it down right, that's all that matters.
All right. My name's Jeff. I live at 270 Silver Lake Trail. I moved to Oconomowoc 5 years ago, and one thing I noticed is there is still a ton of opportunity for growth, and I think this development would be good for the community. Any type of business is going to have some drawbacks, but I think we've seen from the previous meeting to tonight a willingness to work with the council and work with the citizens who are concerned about it. And I think that's a relationship that can continue in that direction as far as them being willing to work with the city and the council to make it a good relationship. And so that it works out good for everyone. There's potential jobs that would be available. There's tax revenue. There's a lot of good things to it that far outweigh any potential negatives, let alone to say that concerns with the turf, concerns with the lighting, there's laws that they have to follow for each of those types of things. So it just seems as though there's already protections in place. And then we also have the investor group that is really willing to work with the town and the city to make sure that everything goes smoothly. One rebuttal to the concern raised with the previous person, I've worked with Mike Chrisman with the building of the Exonia Knights organization. We pay a fee at any field we play at. We pay a fee if we play in Asherpin, we pay a fee if we play in Exonia, we pay a fee if we play at Champion Field. So that's a reality that, of course, they're gonna charge a fee. And that's the way it is any place you play. But in general, I think having more facilities available it's another positive for everyone involved. Because it is hard to get practice time in the winter with the facilities that are available now. So having another one available is another positive. And same thing with having another field available. It would be good for anyone that's interested in playing baseball to have another field available. So I think overall, it would be a really good addition to this community to have this go forward.
Thank you. Nate Rice?
Hi, good evening. My name's Nate Rice. I live at 37803 Valley Road. Live on the north shore of Silver Lake. I just had a couple of things to say, and I know I spoke longer than I should have the last time. I do appreciate the courtesy to allow us to share what we had to say. I did sit on the Parks and Rec Board and Summit and worked with the 5-0s very closely to create 4 more diamonds in the Oconomowoc zip code. And those fields, unless things have changed, the 5-0s get first right on those fields, which they should because they built them. I don't believe there's a fee for people to use those fields, but maybe that's changed since I sat on the Parks Commission. So I'm a supporter of baseball. I talked about this the last time. I played in college. I've coached high school. But what I want to do is really briefly just, first of all, I sent a letter, actually my wife sent this, but she asked me to submit it tonight. So if you didn't get a chance to read that, I think you have it on email, but I wanted to make sure it's in the record as a physical document. And then to follow up on the water quality issue, I sent this morning, and I said in the email, don't expect you to read this, but it shows clearly that this project is in the Silver Lake watershed, so that raises concerns about water quality issues and groundwater issues. And it actually shows on a picture of one of the stormwater retention centers for the Paps Farms Southwest Business Park in the back that drains towards the lake and into the wetlands that feeds the lake. So we're concerned about water pollution and contamination. So because of that, we hired a engineering firm. Rupert Milkey's outstanding, as is Lynch and Associates, but we just said, hey, let's make sure they're not missing something. So Applied Ecological Services out of Broadhead, which runs an international environmental consulting business, provided a report. They said pretty much looks really good. There's just like 2 small things that maybe is more for engineering staff to review about that, to tweak it to make sure it meets the minimum standards. And then from DNR, Pete Wood is an engineer that works out of the Sturdivant office. He's kind of the go-to guy on permitting. I'm sure people in engineering understand who that is. He had a couple concerns about the infiltration pond and modifying what was suggested there to make it more likely to capture pollutants that go into the infiltration basin. The concern is that the water goes through the stone and sand really, really fast, up to 104 inches per hour. So if you can imagine that, it's just like almost like it sucks it down. And because of that, the contaminated pollutants can get into the groundwater table really fast. So there's some standards that have to be met. The standards are met in the plan. I'd love to see the 5-foot space. If you think how fast water can go, 5 feet at 100 inches or whatever, 100 inches per, I can't remember what it is, but you'll see it in here, but that's super fast. Like if you dump something out in your backyard, it may be 3 inches, 2 inches, maybe even only 1 inch. Last thing is just about sound. I submitted some information about whether it would be feasible to have a sound system in the stadium that you would come in, do a concert, and just plug into the PA system, and the person rebutted that notion. But there's some information here from Clearwing Productions out of Milwaukee. They have a national operation. I got a quote for getting a stage and a sound system for a group of 500. Like, what would you probably want for that? So that's in here just as a piece for the record that says that you do need frontline sound. You need something that's gonna push the sound to the people instead of it just like coming down at you like this. And then this last email talks about the stadium probably won't have a full range system suited to a live band, but interfacing with it is not a problem if the overall sound quality isn't a huge concern. So you can do it. So therefore, I think that should remain in the CUP. So I appreciate your time and your leadership and your service to the community, your willingness to listen. I think come up with some really common sense conditions that'll make this project a lot less negative and adverse to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Correo? Excuse me, Nate, did you have those documents?
Hello, my name is Lisa Correo, 37096 Silver Knoll Court, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. As you know from my letters, I've been writing you, I'm against the proposed location of the ball field. This is a sound meter. I've been kind of monitoring it over the last couple weeks. Just for your reference, the amount of noise on my porch from the hum of the freeway is between 50 to 55 decibels. As people were talking today, the chuckling to your joke was about 77 decibels. Just to give you, just to give you a little reference. So I guess my question would be is what is the amount of decibels that is in the ordinance? I've heard 65. It seems like they're not even sure. In their proposed, in the proposed thing, I thought it was 85 decibels. And that just, that cannot be right based on these numbers that we're getting. Has Diamond done a new sound study, or are they using the one from Summit? I think a new sound study would definitely have to be done. I also do have, I wanted to read a reaction from the Freeman. It's the sound off, and it was from somebody that had lived next to the ballpark. A lot of the people were saying that, forgive me, I'm nervous. We're telling the people to go get a life because baseball was more important. Before you so quickly tell us to get a life, I'd like you to consider what the life has been for us now and the neighbors of 5 Diamonds. Many more homes are affected than the 7 houses on the east side of the complex. I live a half a mile down from the complex and hear the bats striking the ball and fans screaming and yelling on a regular basis. Neighbors can no longer leave their windows open at night to cool off their homes. The noise is so loud, it keeps their young children awake.
Neighbors can no longer sit outside on their decks or patio and quietly enjoy their yards on formerly peaceful surroundings. Some neighbors have severe glare issues from the lights into multiple rooms of their home. They can no longer open window treatments in those rooms. Simply put, the lighting is a nuisance. The 9 p.m. stop time was determined after nearly 2 years of meetings with the Town Board of Waukesha, the Planning Commission, the owners, and other interested parties. The owners knew the stop time before the first pitch was thrown that May. The owners, Tom Kalennik and Greg Beatty, simply are not following the rules they agreed to. They intentionally are scheduling games that start too late, possibly to finish by 9:30 p.m. By the way, the owners are also not following the start time of 8 a.m. The players at the complex are practicing regularly just after 7 a.m. The lights, the noise, and the traffic have become such a problem that there are now many houses for sale on the street immediately east of the complex. Life around that ballpark is sadly not what it used to be. It's now bright, noisy, and dusty. My question about this is, what kind of neighbor are they going to be? Are they going to listen to the decibels? It is a big investment for my home. Please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Bender?
My name is Gary Bender. I live at 1271 Lily Road in Oconomowoc. I've lived in Oconomowoc for 77 years. Sounds like a long time, doesn't it? 70 of those years, I've been involved in some kind of baseball, from Little League to Puddles to Brooks to high school to college of 4 years of playing ball to semi-pro here in Oconomowoc for probably 20 years, managed the 5-0s from 81 through 85, and I'm still playing with Pro Health. I have a couple of teammates along with me. We travel, play about 50 to 70 games a year all over the United States, Vegas, Phoenix, Chicago, all over the place. We have a lot of national and world titles. We have an interest, of course, because right now we're playing inside Olympia. I kind of call it almost like a ping pong type softball. So we'd like some kind of inside facility where we could have our training sessions. Every era in those 70 years has their heroes to look up at. I can remember as a little leaguer going down to Roosevelt Field to watch the Bill Blunks, the Harold Schatzneiders, the Ronnie Niemans, the George Schmidt, guys like that. I can remember them down there. 7 years old, I'd ride my bike down there and hope somebody would break a bat. So I might get my hands on that and put a screw in it, tape it up, and I'd be the hero of Elm Street. Be able to use that. Baseball has influenced an awful lot of lives. I applaud some of the people here in this room. As a matter of fact, they have signed minor league contracts, and their kids are here talking in defense. They would like the opportunity to have a destination like this stadium in training facilities. As I look around here at the council, I'm looking at Mr. Stray over here. I coached him, played ball with him, watched his dad umpire in semi-pro baseball. It was rumored he had 20/15 vision. I played ball, coached, and officiated with the Shaw family, wonderful family. We went through a lot of ball together. Very familiar with the Knowles and the Serwinski name from sports. Mr. Ellis, you stated 2 weeks ago, I love baseball. I love baseball. I love baseball. I hope those are true statements. In the last 2 weeks, I drove through this place where this is going to be built. I think it's a magnificent place. I pulled into Harley and I said, Harley's really going to benefit from this exposure. I took a look at Staybridge. Wow, they're going to explode. This is a destination. This isn't just a ballpark. And there's going to be a lot of feet on the ground for the corridor, which I think the council here is trying to improve every time they have meetings just about. A lot of feet on the ground in the corridor. It's a win-win situation. Oconomowoc is good for baseball. Baseball is good for Oconomowoc. It's a symbiotic, mutualistic relationship, a win-win situation. I am definitely for it, as you can figure that out, I guess, from some of my comments.
You want to wrap up, Gary?
Okay. I'd just like to thank the Blue Boys over here from giving us the opportunity. I've talked to some people from Summit. I've talked to people from Pewaukee. A lot of them consider themselves losers. I hope we can be a winner. I'd like to thank the council for at least listening to both sides of the story here. And I certainly hope that the kids of the Nelsons and the Bolsons and the Smiths have a place to train and have a destination to go to here in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Swig?
My name's Jeff Swig, and this is going to upset people. I'm from Heartland, Wisconsin, but I've lived here for my childhood, and I worked here until I was 59. Gary Bender is a tough one to follow because that's pretty much what I had to say of the past, of the opportunity that these young kids are going to have now. I didn't have that, and I was never that good anyway, but like the Bolsons and the Smiths, everybody he recognized here today, they got a chance, and they're going to help other kids maybe make it into the pros. I mean, the first pitch I'll never forget, when I pitched it, or I played AA ball, I don't know if any of you heard of Arnold Kirkenwitz. He went on to play for the St. Louis Cardinals. I got beamed in the head by him when I was in AA. His first pitch, first time I ever been to bat. I mean, it's memories, it's fun, and yeah, that brought up a lot why. But listening to him, and there's my uncle, Lester Winger. He was a big ball player. Gary Bender knows him well. He'd sponsor a state tournament at Roosevelt Field that had maybe 2,000 people come and sit there and watch. Teams came from all over with Oconomowoc. That's the kind of stuff that needs to happen. I mean, we have to have more of that here. And will I come to games? Yeah. I mean, I worked right down the road from there for 40 years. So the place that it's going to is fine. I mean, we had to listen to Harley Davidson concerts. We lived with it. I mean, they'd have concerts during the day. Is it a noise thing? I mean, I'm not up on that, but I'm for it, and let's make it happen.
Thank you. Dan Getzler, I think it is.
Dan Getzler, 1399 Shoreland Lane in Oconomowoc. Those are two hard gentlemen to follow, by the way. So I've spoken in the past about my support for the project. And at the last meeting, there was mention that of all the people that spoke at the last Common Council meeting that lived within 2 miles of the stadium, only one person supported it. So I went to my neighborhood and spoke to a bunch of residents in our Lake Ridge subdivision. I bought Tom Straya's house, by the way, not too long ago. So, out of our,
I can't do that.
out of all the people I spoke to, 100% of the residents in our, of course, I didn't speak to 100% of everybody in our neighborhood. We had 36 people that supported the project. So those are 36 more people that aren't here speaking. I can't speak for them individually, but I can represent them from our neighborhood. So they are in full support of the entire project, and so am I. So thank you.
Thank you. Rob Mitchell?
Hi, thank you very much. My name's Rob Mitchell. I'm not even from Wisconsin, so don't hold that against me. I've been asked just to talk briefly on the turf product or the turf system that's looking to be used. The developers are looking to use a very baseball-specific turf that's used at a lot of the Northwoods leagues already, Duluth Huskies, Lacrosse Loggers, Traverse Bay Beach Bums. We've even got it down in the Pioneer League, at Schaumburg, Windy City Thunderbolts, Gateway Grizzlies, and also recently at some college applications like the Milwaukee School of Engineering over in Glendale. One of the things all those systems have in common is using specific technologies that improve the sport, as well as keeping players and the surrounding areas safe, as well as using materials within them and the whole makeup of the system that ensures that everything around it, including the groundwater and so forth, is completely safe. Plenty of testing's been done on it. We install over 400 fields per year out of an industry that does about 1,500 fields per year, and 80 to 90% use very similar materials as what's being proposed in this system. Thank you.
Thank you. John Van Mersberger?
Good evening. My name is John Van Mersbergen, 720 Westover Street. I am a senior citizen, and I wish I could afford on a fixed income to go to Brewer games like I used to. I don't buy season tickets anymore. I'd love to come out here and watch a baseball game. Now I'm gonna get on the same tractor that Mr. Benner was on. I've been involved in youth sports and baseball for over 50 years. 30 years ago, I was on the board of directors at the Germantown Little League. I was the umpire-in-chief, totally volunteer. I coached and managed for years. My son lives in Summit. I have 2 young grandsons that play baseball. They're 9 and 12. And I can tell you this, when it comes to baseball, that's the best thing for young men and women to do. It builds so much character, so much pride, so much respect for themselves and for each other. I don't know how many of you have been to a game for the young boys at Miller Park, at Helfer Field. You watch these boys just shine, and it's amazing. And my son still has friends. He's 44 years old now. All these boys have grown up to be great American people. They're caring, they love their families, their kids are in sports, in school, outside school. If you don't have baseball or something for these young people, they're gonna be bored, they're gonna be a nuisance. There's no doubt about it. And your community in Oconomowoc could really shine and become a star if you let these young men grow up with respect, dignity, and pride. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Went?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to speak again in favor of the park. I think I've reviewed the changes that you've made, and I think you've addressed the concerns that the citizens in the area had. I guess my only comment would be I'd hope you'd look at the concerns of the applicants, so maybe another compromise can be made in that little area. But I just wanted to commend the council on the work that you've done in the last 2 weeks to address the concerns of the people, and I full-heartedly hope you pass it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Bauman?
Hi, Jason Bauman, 1351 Mamro Lane East in Oconomowoc. I've been to all the meetings, I've spoke, so I won't reiterate anything, but I do want to say that I live in the city of Oconomowoc. I want to make that very clear, that I pay taxes in the city of Oconomowoc. I vote in the city of Oconomowoc, so I want to make sure you guys take consideration to the citizens and residents in Oconomowoc. Summit had their chance, they said no. This is for the city of Oconomowoc to decide, so I'd just like you to take that in consideration. I listened to what you proposed, and I listened to what they went back and forth and proposed. The 4 things that they addressed, the special use permit, the extra hours for the sports activity, the current sound ordinance, and the alcohol policy in the 8th inning, I don't think are unreasonable. So I think you should take that into consideration. I don't see those as issues. And I would hate for something small like this to completely ruin this project. Because once again, my wife and I are for every part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Simons?
Kristen Simons, 37848 Atkins Knoll Road, Oconomowoc. Thank you again for your willingness to hear our concerns and for the obvious work that you've done in the last 2 weeks to address a lot of those concerns. It is very appreciated. I've spoken before, and as you know, my questions and my concerns relate to the artificial turf. At the last meeting, I submitted extensive evidence that document those concerns. I won't do that again. Some of the things that I'd like to talk about have to do a little bit with the water running through the turf. Turf is permeable and the water goes through it, something like water going through coffee grounds and coming out brown as it comes through. My concern, as I've stated before, is specifically this piece of property and its documented high risk for groundwater contamination. I submitted that sewer pack map to you last time as well. The developer's explanation of the turf field and how the water related to it will be managed seems to change a little bit depending on which documents are referenced. In the staff report, it states that the turf is placed over a bed of gravel. Again, it's completely porous and drains the dissolved chemicals directly into the ground. The documents submitted to the Sewer and Stormwater Committee actually stated that the field was grass, and yet that it was impermeable, and those are contradictory. The developer's consultant yesterday at the Sewer and Stormwater Committee stated that there's drainage pipes under the field and referenced those pipes for carrying runoff from the parking lot and the field, but didn't address the dissolved chemicals running through the field and the porous turf. Their own consultant yesterday said, quote, "The ground infiltrates too well," unquote. So what exactly does that mean as far as the relation to the potentially contaminated water in relation to the artificial turf on this property with the high risk for groundwater contamination? That still concerns me. The crumb rubber turf placed over a bed of gravel will filter out particulate matter, but it does absolutely nothing to filter dissolved chemicals and carcinogens and heavy metals. It doesn't filter those at all. That's also true for an infiltration basin where the runoff is held until it drains down again through the infiltration basin, through the soil, and eventually into the groundwater. That doesn't filter out any dissolved chemicals, carcinogens, or heavy metals. At your last meeting, a council member asked the developer if they would consider grass instead of artificial turf. The response was no, because it's too expensive to water. The requirement number 6 for granting a CUP states that the applicant must show that there's community benefit that outweighs any potential adverse effects. The developer stated personal profit margins for artificial turf over grass, but I'm not sure that he's presented evidence for community benefit of turf over the potential for adverse effects versus grass. As Attorney Riffle likes to reference frequently, Act 67, the statutory language in there states that the decision for approving or denying a CUP must be based on substantial evidence, not personal preference or speculation. Has the applicant shown evidence for community benefit over the potential for harm of artificial turf versus grass?
Please wrap up. You're past the 3 minutes.
The response to these questions seems to change from the developer and be somewhat non-committal. So I would hope that you would ask for specifically more defined answers to those concerns. Grass is a safe, easy, and environmentally sound option. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Lee?
Jeff Lee, I live at 37420 Indian Mound Road in Oconomowoc. I also want to thank you and commend you for taking the extra time to work through the details of this stadium application. There's much detail here, and as the mayor commented on February 18th, it's certainly important to get this right the first time and place the correct restrictions on this project, and I think you've done that. From what I've seen, if you follow those restrictions, it's definitely beneficial to the community as a whole. DCE Diamond Club Entertainment has created a sense of urgency with this proposal. They're saying that delaying the decision will impact their construction schedule. Will it really cause a problem, or is this a sales tactic to get you to make a decision before all the facts have been considered. There's much at stake here. Pewaukee took over a year and a half to evaluate this project before DCE pulled their application and went to Summit. Then the Village of Summit evaluated the proposal and discussed the details for approximately 5 months before the applicant pulled their proposal and moved to Blue Ribbon Industrial Park. And at that time, the village board had voted against allowing septic, which made their situation a lot more difficult. The applicant seems willing to make any concession in order to make this project move forward. And I guess my question is, at what point does this not present itself as a good business venture? DCE passed on the Pewaukee site because there wasn't enough TIF money and interest to move forward. In an article dated, or in an article from the Journal Sentinel dated July 26, 2019, Tom Kelnick of the Diamond Club Entertainment stated, "I think we were in Pewaukee approximately a year and a half dealing with a site that was very complicated with wetlands and high water table." The developer also commented in a Journal Sentinel article dated August 18th that the multifamily concept of the development is needed to offset the cost of the baseball diamond. So how is it now possible to build a $20 million project without a multifamily option, without TIF money, and on more expensive land here in the city of Oconomowoc? Several aldermen commented at the February 18th meeting that more time was needed. My question is 2 weeks enough? Can you make the decisions and evaluate all the detail and data that you have before you with what you've seen in the last 2 weeks? The traffic studies were both from, traffic and sound studies were both from Summit. And actually on their traffic study, there's a memorandum that states that there will be less traffic in the morning and more traffic at night. There are several issues with traffic that have yet to be talked about. I won't go through every question, but I do have an email that was dated last Thursday, February 27th, that was submitted, so I'll submit this for public record. A couple of the items that probably should be reviewed is who will pay for traffic changes? If stoplights or roundabouts are needed, will DCE pay or will the taxpayers? Will I-94 on the on and off ramps support the additional traffic? Did the study involve this? Will the exit ramp coming from westbound I-94 need to be expanded to 2 lanes, similar to what was done on the eastbound? How will the stadium traffic affect the hospital traffic? Has this been studied?
Please wrap up.
And during Harley events, there are police during the entire event and direct traffic and police direct traffic flow. Is that going to be required, and who will pay? Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jim Daly.
Hey, long time no see. My name is Jim Daly. I'm a City of Oconomowoc resident and nothing more. I had a lot prepared and found out after all these speakers that most of this is not really relevant to be responsive. I think the concession made by the attorney at the beginning says that, hey, we're okay with this stadium. So that's an initial green light, as I understand it, from a group that was organized and initially opposed to this. So it seems to me the question before the council is really focused on what the restrictions should be and what level that should be at. My 2 cents, for what it's worth, is that this is an incredibly expensive venture, and you know, I think the city has a obviously an interest in regulating, but I would just warn the council not to be too stringent on those regulations to form, you know, harder economic circumstances for the developer to move forward. Gary Bender talked about all the famous baseball players in Oconomowoc, and I assume he was nervous when he spoke because he left my name off of it, but that's the only explanation I can think of. But what you hear again and again is about what baseball offers to the community. And I think somebody in opposition to the whole project seemed to be dismissive of baseball. It's important to understand what this sport is in a historical context to this country. Children grow up with idolizing these baseball players. We have national heroes like Christy Mathewson, who was an inaugural member of the Baseball Hall of Fame, who served in World War I, leaving the peak of his profession, a 2.33 ERA, and died 5 years later on complications from being gassed serving this country. You have Mo Berg, who was a catcher who spied on Japan prior to World War II to take photographs of strategic interest points, which were later used by the U.S. Army in World War II against Japan. And famously, Ted Williams, who not only left baseball after hitting 356 and 34 home runs, or 36 home runs in 1942, to in 1943 serve in the Air Force for the U.S. Navy. But after 3 years of that service, coming back to baseball, left once again in 1952 to serve his country once again with in the Korean War. Those are some examples of the idolization that people have towards baseball, towards what it does to our country. And baseball's been elastic, even in bad times. It's representative of our country in many ways and has a very strong influence on the character of our next generation. Bart Giamatti served as the 7th commissioner. I'm going to my notes a little bit. I may spend time on it, so humor me if you will. I think I have about 45 seconds left.
Very close.
Yeah. Bart Giamatti, who served as the 7th commissioner of baseball, before holding that position, he was a professor of Renaissance literature at Yale University. Pretty impressive. And he used to like to remind people that the word paradise comes from the ancient Persian dialect, which translated means enclosed park or green. Columnist George Will is quoted as saying, people say baseball is just a game. True. The same as the Grand Canyon is just a hole in Arizona. To me, I don't have a quote, but baseball's been integral to me in my life. To my father, when he passes, I know it's going to be our conversations about baseball, the games we've attended together, that are going to be the most lasting memories I have of him. And it would be so good for this community. Please be supportive, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ed Cohen?
My name is Ed Cohen, and I've resided at 1018 North Breens Bay Road, Oconomowoc, for the past 37 years. As I mentioned at the February 18th Common Council hearing, I worked for 30 of those years as a social worker and a therapist and a business owner, helping the people of Oconomowoc area solve often life-threatening problems, rebuild their lives, and achieve their goals. So based on those experiences, I listened very, very carefully to all of the people who spoke on the 18th and today about whether this is really the right project for the people of Oconomowoc, since I was dedicated for 30 years to what was in the best interest of people in Oconomowoc. And what I heard from residents, business owners, council members, the attorney, an esteemed physician, Dr. Simons, supporters and opponents, and those like the mayor, who, as Jeff Lee said, that we need to get this right the first time. So listen to all that, and the concerns were related to health and safety, environmental effects, light and sound, traffic and related infrastructure, alcohol and alcohol consumption. Recently, I did some research, and related to the first two concerns, I came across a couple of short quotes that I'll read to you real quickly. They have to do with turf. In reality, rather than being recycled, these old turf fields and their rubber crumb infill are dumped in abandoned lots, alleys, and even wetlands. This is from Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. This particular person notes that the EPA previously championed crumb rubber fields as a solid waste solution, turning waste into a product. However, crumb rubber fields do not solve a solid waste disposal problem. They merely delay and compound it. Here's the other quote. PFAS chemicals in synthetic turf should sound alarm bells for parents and all municipalities with these fields. Also from Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, Science Director, noting that there's also potentially a huge liability concern for the industry and for municipalities. Both current and retired synthetic turf fields are sources of contamination, leaching zinc, PFAS chemicals, and microplastics into nearby waters. When the true costs are considered, artificial turf makes fields of delusions, not dreams. I haven't heard anybody speak negatively about baseball. I just believe, from listening to everybody and was involved with the Summit process, that Summit was a bad location for baseball. This particular location is bad as well. Potential problems for municipalities, residents, business owners. Explain why stadiums like the one being proposed by Diamond are not built in business parks with adjacent homes and healthcare facilities. So it's just a bad location. Baseball is wonderful. Bad location for it. And I wonder, basic question, is whether in the tremendous effort, whether through the tremendous efforts that the council put into making this project possible, palatable for the community, palatable for Diamond Entertainment, did you really consider whether the project itself was the right one? So I'd like to propose a pragmatic solution based on my years of work and being a resident of the community, and that would be that the council refuses to grant the conditional use permit for the stadium. But if Diamond Entertainment is willing, to amend their plan and allow for the training facility. It gives kids an opportunity to pursue their dreams of playing baseball, takes care of a lot of the health and residential concerns about the stadium itself.
Please wrap up.
Okay. And the one thing I would say, if you do allow a training facility, which would fit perfectly into a business park, it's a business. Make sure that it doesn't have artificial turf with PFAS-laden artificial turf blades and a rubber crumb infield. So thank you for listening. Thank you for the work you're doing and making the right decision for the Oconomowoc community.
Doug Orban?
Good evening, Doug Orman, 2317 Daystar Lane in Summit. First, just wanted to, I raise a question, just an observation that in the hearing a couple weeks ago, as far as hours and the extended hours, I believe the statement from the petitioner was that the additional hours were needed because of rain delays and the weather. I think I heard tonight what they said is they want to be able to schedule soccer games. So to me, two very different things. One of them that goes to a recurring, ongoing need to go late. The other one would just happen based on the weather. The other thing that I wanted to do is bring in just some information for the council. I have 3 articles. The question I think was put to the petitioner earlier in the hearing the other night about the use of, potential use of natural grass turf instead of artificial turf. And the response, I believe, had to do with the economics, and it was too expensive. I have 3 articles that all come to the conclusion in studying the comparison of the costs that natural grass turf over the life of the cycle of the site is actually less expensive. And so I just wanted to, again, bring that in. I'll submit those for the record. Along those same lines, just to point out, just to reiterate, there may be a lot of artificial turf sites out there, but remains a standard. There's 17 of the 22 teams in the Northwest League play on grass, and 28 of 30 Major League Baseball teams also play on natural turf. So the last thing I have is just a question I'd asked the other night. I don't think it was responded to. From my understanding, I believe that the indoor training facility is identified as the primary use, and I want to know if that makes the stadium an accessory use.
Thank you. Hand them to the clerk. Chris Jacob?
Chris Jacob, 230 Thorough Drive. I've been an Oconomowoc resident for 8 years. I encourage you all to vote yes for the Blue Ribbon Project. Having a 3-year-old son at home, my hope is you give my family an opportunity to bring an amazing family-oriented destination to our Oconomowoc community. I can only hope my son has the opportunity to be part of a baseball community that Mr. Bender speaks of. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Beatty? Beatty?
Mike Beatty, 1048 Saratoga Court. I was going to touch on turf traffic noise. It sounds like the city attorney touched on that. It seems like you guys got your ordinances for all those things. I have no problem with some of the things the developer talked about with his trying to meet you guys halfway. I guess my big thing is the indoor facility. I think that's a real asset here in this community. You look at the weather right now, this would be a great opportunity for kids to have a place that they can practice. And not just baseball, you're talking soccer, lacrosse, girls softball, football. There's so many different sports. I know I talked with Councilman Ellis about the Sticks facility in Waukesha. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to go see that. I think it's a great facility. So I'm in favor of this project. The other thing, you know, I've been out here a long time in the Lake Country area since probably about 10 years old, and we're just not small town anymore. Small town, you gotta go north of Ashapin, west of Dousman, we're just not. And if any of you and all of you have been around, like a lot of the older people here, everything's changing. So I'm in favor of it. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Geezy?
Good evening, Brian Geezy. I live on Pretty Lake in the town of Ottawa. I come as the director of Kettle Moraine Lasers Fast Pitch Club. And again, you know, we support the project itself, not just from an indoor facility standpoint as well, but from an outdoor facility. You look at the weather out there now, even early April, you know, you get snow on the ground, everything else. On the turf fields, they clean up faster, they dry out faster. You can use those facilities a lot earlier in the season. I wanted to touch just real quick on what it means potentially to the city of Oconomowoc as well, what an economic impact looks like. The state of Wisconsin Department of Tourism put out some numbers for 2018. Tourism in the state as a whole was $21.6 billion. About 14% of that is for recreational activities, which I would include baseball into that. They looked at Waukesha County as a whole. Waukesha County has seen a 6% increase in tourism dollars. To be able to bring that additional income into the city, into the surrounding Lake Country communities would be huge overall. And then just lastly, the city of La Crosse, they have the La Crosse Loggers, also in the Northwoods League. They did an independent study, the city did, back in 2013 about the La Crosse Loggers. And the study revealed that the La Crosse Loggers baseball team brought between $1.1 and $1.3 million in 2012 just to the city of La Crosse. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Luke Nelson?
Good evening again. I've been up here a few times now. I'm the president of the Oconomowoc Area Baseball Club, the Oconomowoc 5-Os. Our address for the 5-Os is P.O. Box 85, Oconomowoc. To touch on a couple things, number one, to answer, yes, we do pay the Village of Summit. We've paid over $300,000 for the fields that reside out there out of our own pocket. And we also pay $7,000 a year to the Village of Summit in lease fees. So yes, there is a cost for everything, and we do pay it. We have entered into a letter of intent with the group. We have over 165 kids that will benefit from the use of the baseball field as well as the indoor facility. So again, we highly support this, and to rebuttal the evidence of pushing this off any further, I am in construction, I'm a project manager, so I understand construction. We have a letter of intent. We're hoping to be able to get into this facility within the next year. So yes, it will impact many kids, many people in the community, as well as the investors and the people that are running this project. Thank you very much.
Yep. Derek Nelson?
I'm speaking in support of this program. I'm the manager of the 5-Os currently, and I played in Great Lakes League, which is a collegiate league, and I've seen firsthand how this impacts the community. It's a great thing for the youth, and I coached at the collegiate level also, and I can just see how a facility like this, it's just such a big impact, and I hope you vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nate Schott?
Hi, my name is Nate Schacht. I'm at 1333 Red Wing Drive in the city of Oconomowoc. Just want to pass this out real quick. So I know last, 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of talk about Harley, the noise issues with Harley. So honestly, it was something I wanted to look into because I hadn't heard that much about Harley. So I emailed the Summit Police, I emailed the Oconomowoc Police and asked them for 3-year history of all noise complaints against Harley to see if the residents in the area or the hospital in the area or other businesses had issues with Harley. Summit Police said they don't have any jurisdiction over Harley, obviously, told me to go to Oconomowoc. Oconomowoc Police, I don't know if the chief's here, but outstanding job. They responded within, I think, 16 hours or so. They don't have a single noise complaint in the record for 2017, 2018, or 2019. It sounded to me like Harley was everybody's complaint and the standard as to why this shouldn't go late into the night. Seeing as there's no complaints for 3 years against Harley, I don't think it's unreasonable to let them go another hour for a baseball game. Another thing that seems to be coming up a lot is the turf, the crumb rubber. I have something here from the National Resources Defense Council. I personally think we should use the artificial turf on more stuff in the city. According to the National Resource Defense Council, about natural grass, it says these lawns can do substantial harm to the environment, to both vertebrates and insects. Birds, for instance, may ingest berries and seeds that have absorbed pesticides from the ground. Likewise, rainwater runoff from lawns can carry pesticides and fertilizers into rivers, lakes, and streams. And it can also poison fish and aquatic animals. Of course, lawnmowers can pollute the air. So we've got another group of environmentalists saying that we shouldn't have natural grass either. So I guess our option here is we just put everything under concrete. We use crumb rubber fields, we use grass. Somebody's gonna be against everything. They're gonna show you, a research from somebody saying that something's gonna cause cancer and all that stuff. So I say ignore the noise. And when I say noise, the noise back here, coming on the crumb rubber and all that stuff. Listen to Oconomowoc residents. I don't think I've heard a single Oconomowoc resident stand up here yet and be against this. I heard a lot of Summit and Delafield area addresses that say that, it's an Oconomowoc address because that's the zip code, but they don't live in Oconomowoc. So listen to Oconomowoc residents, the ones that pay taxes here, approve this, and I don't think the CPU requirements are all that, or I should say the CPU requested changes are all that unreasonable. So thank you.
Thank you. Doug Schuler?
It's actually Schuyler, Doug Schuyler, but
Schuyler,
that's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I'm from Illinois, so I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but my family, yeah. But my family has called Oconomowoc home for over 100 years. My great-grandmother, Sybil Morehouse Schuyler, she swam across Oconomowoc Lake when she was 7 years old in 1884. By the way, I did it when I was 19, and it's kind of tough, but, give it a shot sometime. The reason I bring that up, I'm proud of my grandmother, my great-grandmother, that is. I'm not a complete outsider, and I think this project would be beneficial to the youth of America. I have 28 years experience as a teacher, coach, administrator. Obesity rates are at 42% in this country. I know we talk about young girls and boys being in a ballpark at 7 a.m. I won't get into the regulations, but I know countless children who spend 20 hours a day in their basement on a tablet or a game, some type of device, and get no activity. It amazes me how we never bat an eye when we open up another bank or a fast food restaurant or a paint store, a mattress store, a Dollar General, but a tremendous facility like this that will provide jobs and memorable opportunities for the youth, I think it's a no-brainer. I remember my first time in a baseball stadium. It's pretty exciting. I didn't see Christy Mathewson pitch, but I saw Dennis Eckersley in County Stadium. He pitched an 11-inning, one-hitter, beat the Brewers 1-0. That doesn't happen anymore, by the way. But when you walk in for the first time, the feeling is undescribable. Again, I couldn't tell you the first time I walked into a fast food restaurant, a bank, a Dollar General. In wrapping up, you know, in 10,000 years, 10 million years, when they dig us up, they're going to say, man, these people really cared about a lot of stupid stuff. But hopefully, they'll also see that we did something like this. And for those who say it's not in your backyard, you can come and do it in my backyard. I'll get the shovels. I've been to the Myrtle Beach Ripken facility, which is very similar to this project. Both my daughter and my sons have played in Mr. Kellenick's facilities. They're clean, they're neat, they're safe, they're well-run. They provide countless opportunities for many people. I've been to the Ripken facilities in Tennessee. I've been to the Field of Dreams in Iowa. And when you see this project through, no one has ever said of those facilities that they regret it. And when you see this project through, neither will you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Public hearing is still open, and now we'll open it up to council members to ask questions, mainly of the applicants, I believe, would be the, of anybody. Charlie, I know.
Go first, as long as he's right there.
Go ahead. Just state your name and address.
Eric Van Mersbergen, 230 North Prairie Drive, Summit. Excuse me. Drive by that property every day. I'm totally in favor of it. And as a Summit resident, I was excited when it was going to be proposed for Summit, but I'm even more excited because it's still the same distance from my house. So I'm the president of the Kettle Moraine Junior Lasers Baseball Club. We've got about 140 plus kids that would definitely benefit from using this facility. And we also signed a letter of intent to have all our teams practice indoors, right in our backyard, which would be great. And I think it would build excitement for the kids in the area about baseball, excuse me, in general, and the opportunity to see, you know, some Northwoods baseball and give the kids something to strive for. So I've lived in Summit for 10 years, and I've seen one building go up in that little industrial park there. And I think this is a great opportunity to add some more value to that property there. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. One more comment?
Thank you.
Bring the card up to the clerk. Just state your name and address.
Kenneth Murray, 2913 North Silver Cedar Road in Oconomowoc, on Silver Lake. I played a lot of baseball. All my kids were baseball players. Some of these fine gentlemen were their coaches. It is an attractive proposition. I'm also a lifelong lake liver. Live on Silver Lake, as I mentioned. Very concerned about the impact, especially the controversy about the watershed, conflicting evidence. I'm glad you've looked at this very seriously and made some of the amendments. I would encourage you to continue to look out for the precious resource of this area, which are the lakes. And that would be just the last thing I would say is please look out for something irreplaceable like those lakes that have been there for a million years. Thanks.
Thank you. Any no other comments? I'll open it up to public comment or comments from the alderman. If anybody has cards, please bring them up now. Otherwise, I'm going to cut it off from the outside.
My name's Matt Trout. I live at 815 Pine Meadow Court in Oconomowoc. I support this development and could not be more excited about how much a positive addition to Oconomowoc it would be. I don't know the math on usage, but to assume where Highway 67 meets Interstate I-94 wouldn't be or shouldn't be further developed is absurd. In my opinion, it's an ideal location. The location provides visibility and excitement to I-94 and Highway 67 intersection. I've commuted that intersection for the last 15 years. The infrastructure supports so much more than what is currently there. I am a resident of the village of Summit. I've been a resident for over the last 10 years, and I live approximately 2 miles south of the proposed site. Many of my neighbors fully support the ballpark and the athletic training site. Most of them are not here tonight, possibly because this is a City of Oconomowoc issue, possibly because they're in Waukesha or other surrounding areas, having traveled great distances for facilities that support their children. They might be stuck waiting for their children's 2-hour practice because the distance back home is too far, and maybe after practice and they're eating dinner in Waukesha or grabbing ice cream with the kids supporting other communities. I've taken my kids and their teammates and supported many Waukesha businesses, including Buffalo Wild Wings, Big Mike's Super Subs, Orange Leaf Ice Cream. To reject a development like this here in Oconomowoc would be bad for local business owners. I even think about the lot owner. He's developed and made an investment, and his investment is set unsold. To reject this and prevent his ability to sell would be unjust. The athletic facility provides convenience for our local families. In our busy times, that means so much. We are accessible through our smartphones, and it's a constant rush to complete the tasks of our days. Providing an option locally allows families to better utilize their time. Our kids don't always understand our stress. To reduce commutes and provide families a local option will better our lives. It might be the difference of me seeing my 2-year-old daughter before she goes to bed, or give me the time to review homework with my 9-year-old son. In my opinion, it will improve the lives of Oconomowoc families. That's it. Thanks for your time.
Jenny? Not sure what the last name is.
Hi, my name is Jenny Meyer. I live at 37416 Indian Mountain Road, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, 53066. Since I didn't know whether or not I'd make it here tonight, I did email, I think, everybody on the list, a letter of my concerns with respect to this potential project. If you didn't get it, I forgot an O in Oconomowoc, so I apologize for that. I am not in favor of the proposed baseball complex. I'm a very avid outdoor person. I swim in the lakes in Oconomowoc. I bike the roads around Oconomowoc. I hike the trails. Everything that you guys talk about in your Oconomowoc tourism website, come, rest, relax, and refresh in Oconomowoc. And you can do that in the water, on the trails, on the roads, and what's the third one? Oh, you can wander and walk. With this baseball complex, I do not know whether or not we would be able to do that. The roads will be disrupted, the lakes will be disrupted, our trails will be disrupted, our peace and quiet at night will be disrupted. We're going to have blaring lights that will cause peaceful walks on the trails to no longer be peaceful walks. So more of the detail of why I'm not in favor of this is in my letter, and I do not approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Mumey?
Thank you for having us. Bill Mumey, 1887 Mineral Springs Boulevard. I was here to address sound decibel readings. I've sent an email to each of the, everyone on the council, including you, Mayor, for readings that we took. on the southwest part of Pabst Farms. We took it at different readings at different times, and you'll see that in the email record, but I wanted to come up and state for the record that an ambient rush hour traffic decibel level that we've addressed or that we've recorded was around 48, 49 decibels. You have video of that sent to you in email. And I also wanted to address the gentleman that came up earlier and spoke to the lack of Harley disturbances that were noted. And I think a lot of that comes from perspective. We all hear it in the Pabst Farms community. I come to you as someone who's coached locally baseball, continue to. I've coached 9 seasons here. I'm in favor of the stadium. Most of our constituents are. But as I said before at a previous meeting, we want to leave the experience at the stadium. We don't want to bring it home with us here in our backyard. We all in Pabst Farms can literally hear the lyrics of the song that's being sung during the Harley Fest. But there's perspective because we know that it's only twice a year. Same as when there's fireworks on the 4th of July. We've all heard fireworks going off at 2 in the morning on 4th of July, but none of us probably in this room have called the police about it because you realize it's the 4th of July. Where our concern stems from is the scope of the ask of the developers. We just want to, our main ask is that we just don't hear it in our yard. There are outliers in our group that have environmental concerns, but they're few. I think our main concern, again, at Pabst Farms is noise. And our ask of you is that you be extremely conservative in your approach when you set the levels for us. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll open it up to discussion among the aldermen. Who'd like to go first? Go ahead, Lou. You want to turn your clock back on so I can cut you off at 3 minutes?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. Let the attorney speak first.
This is still the public hearing.
In the mic.
This is still the public hearing.
How many decibels?
So, before we close the public hearing, it would be appropriate if you have any questions for anyone, in the audience that you want to get further information from, like we did last time after we closed the public hearing. Now is the time to do it, and speak now or forever hold your peace. And then we would move on after closing the public hearing to debate, so that there wouldn't be any input from the public when you are debating and discussing. I think that would be appropriate.
So if you want to bring up the applicant, if we want the applicant to come up and then we want to ask him questions, that would be appropriate now. So whichever one of the three of you want to come up. Go ahead, Lou.
Do you have the acoustical engineer here that you had last time?
No.
There was some discussion in regards to the CUP. The last paragraph, the applicant also agrees that decibel levels in neighboring residential area not experience intermittent or impulsive decibel levels above 55 decibels. The specific neighborhoods where this provision will apply are Briarwood and East Lake Village, including Kingsway condominium project. Are you able to identify what the decibel readings would be in those areas? I know in the heat map, basically, there is identification of what the decibels are at production at the facility, but there are algorithms that come up with hypotheticals, and the actual known isn't going to be determined until the actual facility is constructed and the engineering of the audio is actually implemented. But the ordinance that's currently in place is 60 decibels from, I believe, the point of where it originates. Or I'm not sure, and what I'm looking for is some clarification on how far that sound can travel at a specific sound level.
Before we go any further, there's an ordinance on the books already. And I'd like to have the city attorney kind of explain it. The 55 is put in there as a, move the mic over.
I didn't think you were done.
I'm done.
Your ordinance has 4 different maximum permissible sound levels related to 4 different types of noise. You have impulsive noise, you have intermittent noise, you have continuous noise, you have perpetual noise. Obviously, they would have to meet the requirements of your ordinance. For impulsive noise, you would have to meet the residential district requirement, which is 60 dBA from 10 PM to 7 AM, and 70 dBA from 7 AM to 10 PM. For intermittent noise, it's 55 dBA from 10 PM to 7 AM, and 60 dBA from 7 AM to 10 PM.
Right.
Continuous noise would be 45 dBA from 10 to 7 AM, 10 PM to 7 AM, and 50 dBA from 7 AM to 10 PM. For perpetual noise, your ordinance provides 45 dBA from 10 PM to 7 AM, and 50 dBA from 7 AM to 10 PM. So you've already laid out what the standards are, and they should be required to meet those standards. And that's what the original.
As a point of order, Stan, were you weren't reading the commercial zoning, you were reading the
No,
residential?
I was reading the residential.
Okay. I mean, because the way the commercial zoning statute reads is 80 decibels impulsive noise in commercial zones and intermittent 60. That's not by, like, other places, that's right there.
That's, higher. And they would have to meet that at the closest neighboring commercial, actually at the boundary.
Of the commercial area.
No, shall be made at or inside the property line
At their property.
of the person complaining of excessive noise. So if you have a commercial person that is complaining, you would go over to their property, and inside their line, if it's a commercial or institutional, like over at the hospital, and if it exceeds 70 on impulsive noise, 70 dBA from 10 PM to 7 AM, and 80 dBA from 7 AM to 10 PM, you'd be able to tell them to knock it off. Same thing at any residential district in the city, which would be the closest, I assume, residential, which is one of the 2 subdivisions up to the north of Farm and Fleet.
Well, yeah,
they'd have to meet
currently.
that.
Right, so is it your opinion that if you're in a commercial zone and you're making a noise, when it reaches the residential area, it has to go back down to the residential noise
Yes.
level? Okay. I think that's a good explanation. Yep. I mean, here's where the confusion's coming in, right, with what we're dealing with here, and why this is more nuanced than just, we like baseball. The audio, what they've said in their report is the audio system will be operated to achieve 91 decibels, and that would be a question I would have for the applicant. They can't, under the current noise ordinance in the commercial space, even operate at 91.
Well,
They have
inside the
operated 80.
stadium, they can,
Why?
because it's within their property.
But it
We're
can't- it can't
concerned
go
at the
80
next neighboring property line.
The next neighboring property line is right next door at Harley.
Right, and if Harley complains, and it is above any of the 4 different types of restrictions you have, then if there's a complaint, it'll be investigated. If they're exceeding the limits, then the way this conditional use permit is set up, first, they have to reconfigure, as you heard their sound expert, they have to put their delimiters on their system to get it down so that it's compliant. And if that doesn't work, then they have to bring in a plan to put up, for instance, sound barriers or some other type of attenuation protocol that will take care of that. But you have your ordinances right here. We can't ignore them.
I'm not saying ignore them. What was the impulsive and intermittent noises for the residential?
60 dBA from 10 PM to 7 AM, 70 dBA from 7 AM to 10 PM.
Which one is that?
Impulsive.
What about
It was
intermittent?
70
70
and 60, right?
from 7 AM to 10 PM.
And intermittent is 60.
60.
Kevin, you had a question?
Can you comply? Can you meet the ordinance here?
As it pertains to the residential and/or commercial?
I'm sorry, as it pertains to what he just wrote.
Well, he's gonna have to. It's the
I just want
law.
to ask him, can you?
Yeah, we have no choice.
Yeah, but what it is,
Argument.
well, the problem is that there was something put into the conditional use permit that required something more than what this
Correct.
ordinance says. So basically, that condition has to read, they must comply with the ordinance, whatever the ordinance number is.
Correct.
And I think there's no problem with that then.
Right.
There's no problem.
Right,
Okay,
so
so
we need
let's
to,
move on.
we would
Resolves
need
that
to
issue.
amend the CUP to
We would
reflect.
amend the CUP
Correct.
to rewrite it.
To agree
that's-
with what?
To agree
Correct.
with what
Right.
was said
Yep.
there.
Okay.
Well, okay, then, well, with all that being said, though, what prevents us from putting additional conditions on if they're willing to accept those conditions?
Because under, as it was pointed out before, 6223 7, or 7 sub DE, if you have objective standards, you can't hold them to something that is more restrictive than your own objective standards. I mean, this is the most objective standard that you will ever see in any ordinance. You simply legally can't do it.
It has specific,
It's very specific.
ratings.
We would have to change our ordinance. Yeah.
It's too late.
Correct.
Because they have already relied on this ordinance in making their application.
Well, they also relied on another ordinance when making their application as well, but they've asked us to change that.
That's true.
So when you read.
They
when
can
you-
ask you to change this ordinance to
Right.
make it more restrictive
When
if they
we
want
read
to.
when I read 17.2.12, okay, when I read the noise standards, it says city allows up to 80 decibels in commercial zonings. So if their application is saying they will be using decibel levels higher than that, right off the get-go, it doesn't matter whether it's inside or not.
Yes,
They're
it
in the
does.
commercial zoning.
Okay, hang on a second, both of you. This is the public hearing part where we're supposed to be talking
Yeah,
to the
that's true.
public, and we'll debate later.
Debate
I
with
have
the city
another-
attorney anyway.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Okay, the alcohol license. You're requesting that we go to 8th inning and not the 7th inning.
Correct.
Why?
Well, quite frankly, we would prefer not to have any limitation on the amount of alcohol that is served. The conditional
The
use.
time limit, don't say the amount.
Well, okay,
It just doesn't
exactly. I
sound
mean,
right.
we would like to be able to serve alcohol at the end of the game. I mean, but the reality is that the conditional use permit came back. The city's request was to limit that to 7. We're asking to meet somewhere in the middle. Why? It's revenue generating. It gives us another inning to potentially sell a beverage to an individual. That doesn't mean that we're selling a beverage to an individual that's inebriated. It's just about revenue. It's about having 36 games with one additional inning that allows us to have that opportunity to just sell that beverage.
My concern with that, and I'll be straightforward with you, is DUI. At the end of the day, it should not be about revenue, it should really be about safety.
Right.
And I definitely am against that. There's nothing that's going to allow me for you to change my mind on that.
Just because hold on a minute though, we're not talking about.
Hang on.
Wait.
Regardless of what day it is.
No.
You're stating that you want to go just not through the 7th and 8th inning, but through the rest. And you're saying that you're willing to settle for 8 innings. I'm saying I don't see the point. So you have to give me a reason and why, and it can't just be revenue generating because that concerns me an awful lot.
The reality is that the alcohol consumption policy is one where, just like any other individual entity in your city that has a liquor license, they have a responsibility to make sure that as a function of that liquor license, they are managing the alcohol consumption within that facility accordingly. Nobody is sitting here suggesting that by extending it another inning, we're going to create, many more drunken drivers. We have to police that from the first inning all the way through the end of the game. What it does, though, is that if somebody had one beverage in the first inning and wanted to purchase a second beverage in the 7th inning, we have that flexibility. All we're asking for is the flexibility with the understanding that the onus and the responsibility falls on our group to make sure that the patrons that are attending that game are not inebriated to the point where they cannot drive.
Hang on. Charlie, you had your hand up?
Well, I'll wait because I want to go to item 4.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is about that one.
Well,
I think.
hang on.
Oh.
I had a question about the.
Yeah, it's about the same one.
I wasn't finished.
You're not done? Keep going.
It's about alcohol license still.
Alcohol?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we might be dealing with semantics here. We say after the 7th inning. I think, and I put that section in, my thought was that was through the 7th inning. So essentially, you're done by the top of the 8th. You know, so we might just need to reword that. I didn't mean that you have to stop serving at the end of the 6th. I would like
Right.
it to be consistent with what the Brewers. You go to a Brewers game, I think they're done serving at the 7th inning. You
Seventh
can-
inning,
You
done.
can get it through the 7th and then you're
That's your
done.
opinion, you know? We're asking it to the end of the 8th as a function of just what we've seen from other Northwoods teams.
So you want it to basically the
end
start
of
of the
the
9th.
8th, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I think we were a little off. I would say go all the way through the 7th. You know, it's the top of the 8th. You know, as soon as the 8th inning starts, you're done. You know,
Right.
you get your last round and then you're done. Could you live with that?
I mean, we're asking for 8, you know, quite frankly, and I don't know how this all works, but we can appreciate your opinion. We'd like to know what the opinions are of the other council members.
Sure, well, we'll get to
Right,
them.
right. So, I mean, yeah, there's compromise. We're just asking, is there an opportunity to have a compromise?
And there's a difference when you have a downtown bar, and granted, people drive to downtown bars too, but a ballpark, people drive to the ballpark and then they have to drive away from the ballpark and leave. That's why most major league ballparks have that time limit and they stop serving at a point, so.
Go ahead, Lou.
There are a few items in the CUP that,
Well, let's continue with the liquor license part.
well, I would move to amend
We're not
that.
moving,
I know,
this is
but
public
that, it's
opinion.
gonna depend. If we look to amend or change a CUP that's identified here, it's gonna change the structure of the conversation and the questions and the debate that's that we engage in. I am not a proponent of limiting the alcohol sales to any inning. I think having them have a responsible alcohol consumption plan is all they should need.
Okay, again, we're starting to debate. This is to ask questions of
Right,
him.
but-
So we know what
Are we done with the public hearing? Does anybody have
Oh,
any more
I have-
questions of anyone?
Yes, I do.
I've got a ton of questions, it's just that, okay.
The question I have for you, do you plan on, this is, what we're talking about now is the outside, you know, at the ballpark. You will have a restaurant and a bar, I'm assuming, inside the building?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a full-fledged restaurant, you
Well,
know?
okay, you're gonna
yeah.
be serving food, you're gonna serve beer there too?
Yeah, that would be our intention, yes.
And what are the hours for that? I mean, what are your indoor hours going to be?
What is dictated by the indoor hour, I mean, our indoor hours are,
That's not part of the conditional use permit,
No,
is it?
they'll get a separate, well, there will be a liquor license, but it will describe premises differently. And there will be one set of rules for indoors, and there won't be one set of
Will be a
doors,
separate set of rules.
one set of
So-
rules for outdoor.
Okay. And
question.
will the indoor area be open after the game?
the indoor area would potentially be open, yes, after the game.
So, okay. So it's very potential that whoever's at the game may want to go inside and grab something to eat or do whatever and
Possibly.
have a beverage. So that would still be something that's going to be there. It just wouldn't be at the game outside. Okay, other questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Kevin. Oh, wait, hang on,
No, go
Karen.
ahead, yeah,
Let
please.
Karen go.
Okay, so I'm going to address the artificial turf consideration.
Where I was going.
I know they've changed considerably since the 1960s AstroTurf first came out, and now there is considerable evidence that the crumb rubber turfs are leaching chemicals and carcinogens into our groundwaters and contact with the athletes as well. To points 7 and 8 on the CUP, the evidence that's presented to us, will the proposed conditional use create adverse impacts such as hazardous materials? I'll cut to the chase on that. And then number 8, will the proposed conditional use negatively affect the health? The backup for that is basically the 2019 EPA released their FRAP report on crumb rubber. The FRAP report is completely inconclusive. I have a question. The question's coming. It's inconclusive. They've done part 1 of 2 parts of the study. They actually found 356 different chemicals in the crumb rubber. 200 of them were carcinogenic, but they took no stance on it. They took no stance on it whatsoever. And they also say, and I quote, neither part 1 nor part 2 of this study, part 2 is not even done yet. It's been delayed and delayed. Separately or combined neither one will constitute an assessment of the risks associated with playing on synthetic turf fields with recycled tire crumb rubber infill. Okay, so the feds aren't policing this right now. My question to you is, have you considered other options, either natural or organic infill, which could be made up of, don't laugh, but it's natural, coconut husks, cork, or processed walnut nutshells, or even olive pits. I'm not kidding. And these are all natural ways that none of these chemicals would leach down into our beautiful lake country area, into our waters. So that's my question. Have you guys considered any other thing other than the synthetic turf?
To answer your question, they
The
have
crumb
been,
rubber.
yes, they have been considered. They're expensive, to the tune of, I mean, I think we're talking about $250,000 north of what the cost would be with a crumb rubber material. The reality is that the EPA study also stated that they didn't find anything specific that would be harmful to an individual as a function.
That's not true.
Well, they did.
It was inconclusive. They wouldn't state one way or the other.
Right.
They remained neutral, so.
But at the end of the day, we're going to have that argument on both sides of the fence, right? And when you look at where we're at as a state, I mean, there's 98 high schools that are now using artificial turf. Out of those 98, I believe almost 95% of them are using a crumb rubber type of a material. I mean, there isn't a position on it one way or the other, but there also isn't a position that says that it's unlawful, that you cannot use it. I mean, the reality is that, you know, if a school is using this product, why are we not able to use this product?
And I understand what you're saying, but they say it could be like a decade or two before this comes to fruition in our water systems. And the excuse that these other schools are using it, like,
Why don't you allow him?
like, okay, but the excuse that, like, we have it at Oconomowoc High School, that doesn't give me substantial evidence that it's not harmful. My neighbor has asbestos flooring in her basement. I'm not going to put it in my house, so.
But, you know,
it just doesn't.
the one thing that I would say, and I'll allow him to address this as well, and this may just kind of say whatever, but I look at it from somewhat of a logical perspective, and that is I-94 has 45,000 cars that travel east and west on that interstate. That has been there for how many years? Do you know how much crumb rubber is emitted or distracted from those individual tires? We don't know, because there's not a specific study. But I think logic would say that there is rubber material. Yes, maybe we could all agree on that. So when we look at that amount of space in between what we're proposing, in terms of what we're proposing, are our wells contaminated? Or is the water table contaminated? I mean, we are next to I-94. 45,000 cars traveling up and down that every single day. So, I mean, I don't have the statistics. I tried. I want, you know, does the DOT have any facts on this? Are they able to measure this? But you got to think that, at least from a logical perspective, this has been in our community. This is in our environment. It's been here for a long time. And our water tables are not contaminated. We're talking about 3 acres of turf here.
Does he have anything else to add?
And I understand, but I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here. I'm trying to get evidence on both sides of the issue so that we can make a good decision.
I think that's as good as we're going to get.
And I would talk to the studies. There are hundreds of scientific studies being peer-reviewed and done by independent bodies that have tested the use of crumb rubber in artificial turf fields. And there's hundreds that have come out and explicitly said how safe it is to be used. In terms of some of the comments that are made in terms of metallic materials and carcinogens that come out of them, every study has near enough shown that there is a smaller amount than is in the air walking down the street on a regular day. Also, it shows that it is all well below the European and American standards for safety measures when it comes to children's toys and household products. I heard the word or the PFSA, or PFAS as we call it, that was brought up earlier. There are more PFAS on your frying pan and your skillet in your kitchen than there is in an artificial turf field.
No, there's not, because I don't use those kind of pans.
Most of us.
So again, there is science that fully supports the use of crumb rubber in these fields.
And I just wish there was more evidence that you guys could give us, because
There was, I believe, evidence was provided.
University of Colorado Department of Civil Engineering says that zinc leaches from crumb rubber at levels well above EPA freshwater standards and is acute toxicity to aquatic organisms. Like I said, just playing devil's advocate, trying to get both sides of the issue.
Now, was that the study done where it was just a bunch of crumb rubber in a glass of, in a Pyrex glass of water, because that isn't how a field is built. That's the other thing to take into account, is studies that we refer to are ones that are done in the same way that an artificial turf field is built and constructed. All of those things come into play if you just take a material and throw it inside a scientific glass experiment. You know, you're not going to get real world results that need to be tested on the field.
Okay, one more question for you. You said you have been responsible for installation of 400 of these turfs out of about 1,500 that are installed in the country, right?
That's annually.
Annually, right. Then why are a lot of people, and there's an article and some research I have from New Jersey, that a lot of communities are tearing out their crumb rubber turfs and crumb rubber playgrounds. That's that stuff that's all around the playgrounds that kids are playing on. Then why are a lot of communities taking the effort now to pull all that crumb rubber out?
I can't speak for why people do things, but I will speak for what in the industry. The industry is still installing 80% plus every year of their fields, of those 1,500, with SBR crumb rubber as the infill for those fields. So, and in terms of just within our company personally, we have not removed any artificial turf fields with crumb rubber, other than the fact that the turf has worn out and is needed to be replaced from just being 10 years, 12 years, 14 years old. There's been no other reasons that we've replaced the turf field.
It just concerns me because at some point we thought asbestos was safe in our homes. And there were studies done that said asbestos was safe and that lead paint was safe, and we can go on down the line. So, like I said, just trying to gather evidence and information from you.
Sure, yeah, and obviously, you know, that's why there's been, you know, and I believe they were shared, and if not, they can certainly be shared again, but that's why there have been a lot of peer-reviewed independent studies that have been done on this by, you know, departments of public health, by, you know, universities, you know, by the government, that have all done these independent peer-reviewed studies.
Charlie?
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's having to do with the stormwater that comes off of this. And you guys had to submit a stormwater plan, correct?
Yes,
And
yesterday.
that went to the
Yeah,
Pabst
do you
Farms
want Mark?
Stormwater Committee?
Yes.
Did you guys have any concerns with their installation that
Mark,
they
do
have?
you want to address that? I'll let him as the VP. He's the vice president of the group.
Water boy.
So the project was reviewed by our consultant engineer, Rooker Milkie, to make sure that it conformed with all the technical standards that are in place for the Pabst Farms Joint Stormwater District. The project does meet that on this particular site, and I can talk stormwater in general. What they're doing is water's coming off their parking lot, going into a pipe. That pipe is going to take that water to a wet basin, which is a clay-lined pond. It'll sit in there. A lot of times the water evaporates, you know. But in the event that there is a large rain event and the capacity of that wet pond is exceeded, it would then overflow into an infiltration basin. So any water before it goes to an infiltration basin has to have some settling out in order to take out the solids. And that's how their process is set up. And so then the field, there was a comment, there was some confusion as to how they modeled the field surface, and it was initially thought that it was being modeled as grass, and that is not correct. At the Stormwater District meeting, they came up and discussed the numbers. They have 9 acres of area that they were treating as paved area. So generally, 98% of that water is running off, and that's how they modeled the field. So it was modeled at the highest level of runoff to it. So the district did approve their plan last night because it did meet all of the standards.
There was another engineering firm, though, that designed it.
Correct.
So,
It was designed by Lynch and Associates.
Lynch and Associates is the firm that designed
Right.
it, that did the stormwater management plan, and was just reviewed by another engineering firm.
Right.
That it says it would meet the Pabst Farms, the city Pabst Farms Summit specifications. So really, nothing can come off of the field in a 100-year event. There's swales, it goes into the pond, it'd be very difficult put it this way, if we ever got that much rain, we'd have more problems than worrying about that.
Thank you.
So anything that comes off of that field will be filtered into that, explain that, anything that comes off of that field?
So the way the field is designed is that we'll have piping underneath it. So it's built with a base of stone, so the water will infiltrate down the stone, and then there's small pipes that run throughout the field. So this was something that their engineer provided to me showing AstroTurf. I'm not going to say that this is exactly what they're building, but this is what they showed to me when I asked the question. So as you can see, there's a lot of these smaller pipes right here that are laid in the stone underneath the surface. So this right here is the surface. They have pipes that are going all the way throughout the field. Around the exterior perimeter of the field, there's a larger pipe. That's what this is. And that pipe will then tie into the pipe that's designed to carry the water that's picking up the water from the parking lot. So they have a 36-inch diameter pipe that goes from the parking lot, cuts underneath the field, and it goes to the wet basin pond that's just to the west of the playing area. So that's where all of this water will go. It'll get collected underneath the field and go by pipe into a larger pipe that'll take it to the wet basin, which is a clay-lined facility. If that basin overflows, it goes into an infiltration area.
How big is that wet basin? It's big enough to hold
They
100-year flood,
modeled
right?
so that the 100-year event would be contained on site,
In a
which
wet
is a 6-inch rain event over 24 hours.
Is there any jurisdiction or whatever that we have to test waters down the road to make sure that
Yes.
we're not having leaching of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it would have to be because there's state and federal rules.
Yep.
Right?
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, I will close the public hearings. We'll move on to regular business. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's see, we'll move on to item 5, approval of the meeting minutes for February 4th, 2020. We need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Any other comments from any citizens on any other subject besides what we talked about for the last couple hours? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we have three items. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Question.
Yes.
If we approve the CUP that's coming up tonight for the Diamond Entertainment, is that how these licenses are going to be coming to the council, is through the consent agenda like the one that's on here for Rock River Hog Chapter tonight? Well, see, we don't sit and discuss what happens with the Harley event that we're going to approve tonight in the consent agenda, that we seem to have a lot of concerns about what we're approving or not approving at this other facility.
That's a good point.
Go ahead, Diane.
Mayor. The licenses that come under the license, what we have generally called the license resolution under consent, therefore special, they're picnic licenses, they're temporary licenses, say for a fish fry or some other event. A temporary picnic license is not what they would get. They would already be licensed at the field as well as the facility, and so this would be a special event. And according to the way I'm reading the CUP, that has to come to council. Now, if it goes underneath a committee first, that I don't know, but I don't think it would be put on a consent agenda, as a consent agenda item.
Okay, I'm going to have some concerns when we get to that part
Yeah,
of the CUP.
sure, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
No, the Rock River Hog Chapter doesn't have a liquor license, so this would give them a
Okay.
temporary, that's what this is for.
Just wanted to make sure that's not how this was going to be
Yeah,
done.
no.
All right, then I have no problem.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying, oh, no, we don't, let's do a roll call.
Now, this is on the consent agenda,
on the
to
consent
approve the
agenda.
consent agenda,
Yes.
okay.
Alderman Shaw,
Aye.
Alderman Ellis, Alderman Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to Finance Committee, consider act on budget amendment for 2019 fourth quarter, 10/1 to 12/31 for grants and donations received. I'll let you explain it first before I go for a motion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so at the council meeting this week, we will split the budget amendment into its two sections. So the first section is to approve the budget amendment for grants and donations to the city for the fourth quarter. So this consists of grants and donations that have come into the city that are over and above the amount that was budgeted in those line items. So the budget amendment authorizes both the revenue and the expenses in those line items.
Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Since these are amendments to the budget, we need a 2/3 vote, is that correct? Okay.
Okay, so we need a motion first.
So moved.
Second?
This is to act on the budget amendment for 2019 fourth quarter, grants and donations received. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart. Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Next is to consider act on a budget amendment for the 2019 fourth quarter for Northeast Region Project. We need a motion to approve the budget amendment.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Second.
Go ahead and explain that one.
Sure. So this budget amendment is related specifically to the Northeast Region Project. As a reminder, the Northeast Region Project is a joint development between the city, the Oconomowoc School District, the St. Matthew's Church, a developer, and the landowner in the area, who all came together to make this project happen and shared costs between it. So there is a development agreement that was approved in 2017 that all parties approved, which laid out the original estimated cost of the entire project, which is just over $3.5 million. The city's share of that is about $423,000, and the other parties share the $3.1 million. In the development agreement, it's laid out that the city will pay all costs and bill out each of the parties as described in the development agreement. So currently, as we pay costs, we put everything into accounts receivable, and then we have to move it out into an expense and bill people as these things come forward. So at the time the development agreement was approved, all parties approved the development agreement, but the council never did a budget for the project in total. Instead, what we've done is, as the contracts and costs come in, amendments have been made to the budget along the way. So at the end of the year, what we do is all the contracts and costs that have come in for the budget amendments throughout the year, what we need to true up the costs at the end of this year is about $120,000 budget amendment. So the second part of my memo, or the memo that actually Mark and I and Sarah put together, shows a recap of the status of the overall project to date. So the project estimate, about $3.5 million, and then it will show you the whole project to date, and that we are a bit over budget on the costs to date. This project is nearing a close. So in 2020, there's just a few projects left to do: sidewalk, a shared use path, and some stormwater work. So again, in 2020, you will likely have a budget amendment to true up those costs as well. I think that the memo lays out what those costs are for you pretty well. If you have questions about overruns at all, that would be Mark that will explain that part to you. Otherwise, if there's any questions.
Do you have any questions?
Well, yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
Sorry. By approving this, we're going to also be able to submit those costs to the other entities.
Correct.
And get payment on that. Otherwise, if we don't approve this, we don't get payment.
Well, yeah, I mean, we are supposed to have approval to record these as expenses in the city's books, yes.
Go ahead, Tom.
they're gonna pay us in one lump sum? I mean, I can't, how much?
No,
is-
we've been billing this all along,
Okay, 'cause
okay?
I figured
As
St.
the
Matt-
pay requests come in, we've been billing. Now, the developer is paying us as billed,
Yeah.
the school district is paying us as billed, the landowner has a deferred special assessment for when the land gets developed, and St. Matthews has a special assessment that starts as soon as the project is finished. So we haven't collected all of the costs yet.
Oh.
Some of those are deferred revenues.
Well, St. Matthews will have to take a second and third collection on Sundays?
I believe they have a special assessment that splits their costs over 10 years.
Okay.
Matt, do you have something?
Yeah, Mark, how much over is the city portion of this project? How much more are we spending on this one?
Fortunately, I'm only looking at the total project cost, so I couldn't tell you exactly. The city portion was about 11% of the total. So we're, $300,000 over, so it'd be 11% of that number.
So 30,000.
So ours is about 30, 31, okay. The reason I voted against this the last time around, and I thought Karen did a good job pulling it out so we could talk about these, is I didn't have a really good explanation as to what we were over and what we were doing, which is why I voted against it last time, and I will vote for it this time, just to do the budget amendment so we can get paid, but I'm not happy that we overspent for that project, so that's my little commentary, but I'll still vote for it, so we can get paid.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwark.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to utility, consider act on a resolution, resolution number 20-R2859, awarding biosolids contract and authorizing budget amendment. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Kevin?
Thank you. The wastewater treatment plant sent RFPs out for biosolids hauling. We advertised it on January 16th and January 23rd. We had 3 different firms that took the paperwork out, and only one firm actually submitted a bid. That one bid was from our Badger State Waste LLC. They have actually been doing the work for the last 4 years for us. Their bid is 5 cents per gallon for hauled biosolids. I did contact the other companies and ask them why they couldn't place a bid. One of the companies had taken over a lot of the contracts from other firms that didn't do the biosolids hauling correctly last year. One firm told me they would have to buy more equipment just in order to do our work, and that wasn't cost effective for them. And the other vendor said he just wasn't taking any clients. In my memo, I put down all the additional analysis, what they have to do in order to haul the biosolids. I believe it's going to cost about $100,000 to haul the biosolids for 2020. So that's why I'm asking for the budget amendment. It's a 3-year contract with Badger Waste. I did contact companies or cities around here just to make sure that we were getting a good price, like Derek asked me, and the lowest that anybody was doing was 4 cents. And they're not actually, if you follow the additional analysis that I sent you of what we are asking, they're not even doing a third of it. Right. And their contract is done at the end of this year, so they're gonna have to bid it again, and they're actually asking to use our RFP. Everybody else was 6-7 cents.
Thanks.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, is this motion that we're voting on to accept the proposal, to accept the budget amendment, or both?
Both.
Okay.
So it's a 2/3
So it needs a
vote.
two-thirds
vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions? None. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwark.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to Plan Commission. Consider act on ordinance 20-0976 to amend section 17.108, conditional use specific standards for the city of Oconomowoc zoning code relating to 6A, general outdoor recreation, commercial hours of operation.
The next three items on the agenda are all interrelated. The Plan Commission did review all three items and sent them forward with a positive recommendation back on February 12th. We held a public hearing on the first two items, the first one being the text amendment of the zoning code conditional use permit standards to amend the hours of operation. The ordinance that's in your packets this evening is what the Plan Commission recommended to you. And they felt that instead of the 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily, they thought an hour on the front end to 7 a.m. was reasonable. They also felt 10 p.m. would be acceptable for non-athletic activities and 11 p.m. for athletic activities, and then those could be extended due to inclement weather. That does not match what was in the conditional use permit, so if you are comfortable with this, you could leave it as is. Otherwise, you could make a motion to amend it as what the revised conditional use permit reads, and that is 10 o'clock with the extension of weather for the activities.
Go ahead, Matt.
So the problem I have with changing this significantly, I don't like what the planning commission did. And I think we should go back to the 10, but change it, allowing to the extension of hours for athletic activities to 11 o'clock with inclement weather. That would match I think more the CUP, because the way this reads, the change right now, 7 a.m. to 11, and then additional limited extensions for exigent circumstances, inclement weather, et cetera. So you're talking, you could have things going till midnight. And that's, that's way beyond, when these folks submitted the application, they knew there was a 10 o'clock end time. We're giving them some allowance there by changing it, and I think that makes the most sense for both, make that uniform with the CUP and also do what's right for the community.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
On the flip side of that, where we're saying 10 o'clock for non-athletic events, in your planning thoughts, it says the cutoff time of 11 p.m. is consistent with other late activities for other businesses, such as the temporary use permits for Wisconsin Harley-Davidson. So are we restricting them too much on that side?
No, I think if we give a temporary use permit, we could let them go till whenever. Right, Jason?
Right, the temporary events, maybe the non-athletic events would have to come before you, and I would treat that as a line item, agenda item, where you guys could debate that and talk about the hours of operation, the parking, the et cetera. So.
Okay.
I disagree completely. If you cannot operate outside of your ordinance, you cannot grant temporary permission to do something that your ordinance does not allow. Period.
So they both have to say 7 to 11.
So if it says 7 a.m. Or 7 to 10 a.m. for non-athletic related events, that is the law in this city, and no temporary use permit, special use permit could
Go,
violate.
because this has a CUP that has standards specific, and Harley-Davidson does not have a CUP.
Right.
So that's the difference, correct.
So it's very important to get this the way you want it to be, because you're gonna have to live inside of this no matter what.
I agree.
In that zoning district.
So can you restate how that should read to be in compliance?
Well, it depends on what you want.
Well, we'll just have to say 7 if to match. Like Matt said, if we want to do it on a temporary use permit, give them 7 till 11. This has to stay 7 to 11 for any event. So what it would have to say is the hours of operation for all events would be 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
I can't live with that change. That's too much. It just is.
Right. Well, right now, the way we set this up is we were trying to look at the events there in two different ways: athletic events and non-athletic events.
Right.
And because the concern from the community was primarily related to noise for concerts and that sort of thing, more so than the baseball activity, from what I heard and what staff heard. So we'll put a hard line, 7 to 10 for non-athletic related events. There are no non-athletic events that are even permitted here under the current draft of the CUP, unless they come in for, a special use permit. Now, with regard to the non-athletic events, because of issues that were brought up by Alderman Rozak, we amended it to make the most restrictive thing for discussion tonight in the CUP, cutting off at 10 PM with the potential for extension. That's inconsistent, as Jason had indicated, with regard to this draft of the ordinance. So right now, on the table, I think you ought to talk first about athletic events and then talk about non-athletic events. Do you want it to 11 PM and allow it to be extended for inclement weather? Or do you want it 10 PM, extended for inclement weather? And I would think you want to resolve that first, then you could talk about non-athletic events. Go ahead.
Well, they've already stated that for just sports only, 1 additional hour, that means it would be from 10 to 11.
It'll be 7 to 11.
Right, so then it would be 7 to 11, assuming.
That's what they're requesting.
Right. So where's the discussion there?
Well, it's what we want to allow.
You want it 10 o'clock cutoff or 11 o'clock cutoff with the option if it's rain and
Right, it would be a
lightning?
10 o'clock cutoff, but then if it's rain or
So then
inclement
it's 7
weather.
to 10
Right.
with,
Correct,
So-
I think that's what I understood him saying.
That's not what they want.
that's what they want.
Okay.
Well, so here's my proposal is we amend this to say the hours of operation for athletic activities shall be only between the hours of 7 AM and 10 PM, period. Extension to the hours of operation for exigent circumstances such as inclement weather is allowed. And I actually don't limit that there
Don't
because
limit it.
I think that's the right thing to do is they told us when they were here the last time that they can start games whenever they want. If they can start games at 6 and mostly get them done before 10, they should. What I'm saying with that change is, look, if a game goes really long or they got lightning for 2 hours and they need to finish it, I don't have a problem with them doing that on a once in a while basis. But the way it reads now goes to 11 and then still extensions beyond that. So now you're looking at games into midnight, and that's a bridge too far, I think, for this project in that area.
So you're opening that up, there's no.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
11 or
just,
12 or 1.
they are allowed an extension of hours of operation for the athletic events if there's a weather delay. Because I don't want them to have to be done like at 11 o'clock if they've got 2 more innings to play.
I like that, yeah.
I think what we have
Yeah.
to have is, you want to have two separate
Well, I just think it would be
things.
beneficial to get a handle on this, is
Okay.
find out what the council wants to do on that particular issue
On the
first.
athletic events.
Right.
Okay, so the way it's stated now is that you have item A. I think what we have to do is split it to item A and item B, where item A would be the hours of operation for athletic events shall be between, if this is what the amendment is that you want, 7 AM to 10 PM, and then the council approves, or, extending it for extenuating circumstances such as weather, if that's what you're looking for. Now, that's not what they're looking for in the conditional use permit. They're requesting 7 to 11 for their events. So that's something that the
Right.
council will have to decide.
Well, why don't I make the amendment, and split it out, and then we can talk about that.
Because right now it says 7 to 11, so that's what we have to go
Yeah,
with.
so why don't I make the amendment to split out section 1 and do part A, which is hours of operation shall be limited to only operating between 7 AM and 10 PM daily for non-athletic event-related activities, period. New subpart B, the hours of operation for athletic activities shall only between the hours of 7 AM and 10 PM, period. Extension to the hours of operation for exigent circumstances such as inclement weather is allowed. And that's
we
my
have-
amendment.
That's your amendment, so you have two things.
So the only amendment is 7 to 11 PM for athletic
No, 7 to
activities.
10.
I'm sorry, 7 to 11. 7 to 10 for athletic events, everything else is exactly the same. 11 PM
No,
becomes 10.
it's not. I took out the common council part.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
They don't need to come to common council approval for inclement weather.
Oh.
And I split out A and B. I
But
split out A
the
and B.
reason that this is in here is because this is only a conditional use. You may have another use that comes in a zoning district like this that you don't want to grant the extension for inclement weather.
Oh, so in this ordinance, you want to leave it,
I highly recommend leaving that in, because.
Well, how is that gonna function though for baseball? These guys aren't gonna come to
No,
us.
no,
and
no,
ask
no,
for-
no. Let's say you got somebody coming in across the way that wants to do motocross racing in a different property. And you say, we're not going to allow them to extend it beyond that period of time. by conditional use because we don't want that particular use going, regardless of anything beyond 10 or 11 PM, whichever way you go.
Well, the way it reads either way, I don't think you're gonna get around that. I think someone else is gonna come in with the motocross place and say, you allowed it for them, why aren't you gonna allow it for me?
I'm just saying that it gives you the option to say no.
Okay, then I'll just make an addition then to put that back in, which is the common council may provide for limited extension to the hours of operation. Continuing on.
Okay, so we have a motion for an amendment. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. And this is to amend it so that it would be 7 to 10 for non-athletic related events, 7 to 11
So
for.
7 to 10.
7 to 10 for athletic related events, and the council has the ability to provide extensions. Now, the question I have on this is if it's 7 to 10 for non-athletic events, for their special use or their temporary use or whatever, they cannot go beyond 10 o'clock.
So
Which
right, yeah.
means that they're, if they wanted to work in conjunction with their business partner or the business next to them, and Harley Davidson has the ability to go to 11, correct?
Oh, they go longer
can't
than that.
do that.
Right.
So that's why that 7 to 10 for non-athletic events probably is not a good solution for that business park. Actually, it's a general commercial park, but.
I think we could add in, which is why I wanted to split it out. We add into Part A that this is the normal hours, and then that the common council can issue a temporary use permit for basically anything they request. Why can't we add that in?
Yep, we can do that.
So that works it out. So if they come in and they get a picnic for a church, and that goes till 10, great, they're fine. If they want to do a concert, which I know they're going to work with Harley, they come in, they get that temporary use permit. We say, well, hey, we want to do that till midnight. We're probably going to say, yeah, because we let Harley do it already. You know, now if there's 50 concerts in the year, at some point, the common council's probably going to say, yeah, that's too much. So I think that's what I will amend later on. Once we vote on this amendment, I'll amend that A again.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I think the Harley ones only go till 11.
They go to 11.
Yeah, that's
He's
what
just
they,
being-
that's what they
permitted
claim.
for.
Yeah, that's what they claim.
Oh,
but
come
it's-
on, that's only 11. Go ahead, Derek.
I guess I'm concerned with, do we allow Champion Field to have ball games after
10 o'clock is usually their
10?
time limit.
That's it?
Well, I mean, the lights, and people complain about the lights there
Okay,
in the high school.
well, I guess I
and
don't
get
want to
opposed.
restrict them more than Champion is for having ball games, because there are going to be nights when there's not big baseball games, and they're just trying to fill the field with something, and there won't be thousands of people there, there'll be some people in.
Bunch of middle-aged guys trying to act young still.
Derek, to that.
Benny, is that you?
There are, at the end of the year, they have a tournament where they do run until 11 o'clock. You know, they'll have games starting at 7, 8, 9, 10, and then. or
And they don't have
10
to get
o'clock is
special
the
permission to
champion
go
one
later.
get to 11.
All I'm saying is most of those Northwoods games are going to be probably done before 10 o'clock, because you're not going to
I
get
think
people there to stay that late. Kids and families are going to leave by 10 o'clock anyway. But if they have, I don't want to restrict them from making money, because I want them to see them be successful. If they can sell athletic time that fits within that period, and they're requesting to go to 11 for athletic events, I don't really see a problem with it, because it's not going to be large. Maybe they can't have the PA system on after 10 or something like that for, I don't know, I'm just trying to, I want to see them be successful. I like it, and I don't want to restrict them and put them under because we're being too restrictive if they can make money later. That's, I
Yeah,
just wanted to be considered.
again, this is a proposed amendment by Matt, so I mean, this is an up or down vote on the proposed amendment. Go ahead, Lou.
Is there a way to have those special type tournament leagues have that extra hour? So normal Northwood leagues conclude at 10, and you have special league play or tournament play.
What's the difference? Who's playing there?
Well, the number of game opportunities would be driven on that.
You know, you look at the Northwoods League, and I looked up at their schedule, and I looked up a lot of different things. They play from the last week of May to the first week of August. And you're talking probably, of the 36 home dates, half of them are on weekends. So Friday, Saturday, or Sunday afternoon. So you may have 1 or 2 games played at night. I mean, you don't have that much activity really during the week there. To leave it from 7 to 11 makes sense, I feel. You just don't have that much activity, and that business park at 5 o'clock on Friday night is empty.
Is, right?
And Saturday and Sunday, there's nobody there. Go ahead, Tom.
The chances of the Northley Woods to go over 3.5 hours is almost ludicrous. I
They
mean,
start between 6 and 6:30.
yeah, they don't sit there and pull on their pants and put their arms on, and they just go and play ball.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the Northwood League time constraint that I'm trying to get my hands around. It's everything else associated with it. That
No, the public hearing's closed. So we have a motion and a second on Matt's amendment to restrict the hours from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. instead of the 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So we need we have a motion and a second. So if an aye vote would restrict the hours till 10, a nay vote would leave it the way it is. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Nay.
Alderman Ellis.
I'm confused.
You want it 10 or 11 for baseball games?
Athletic events. So a nay
Athletic
A nay
means,
would leave it at 11,
and then an aye means
10.
nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Nay.
Alderman Stray.
Nay.
Alderman Kavieski.
Nay.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
5-3.
It failed.
Okay. So that's still at 7 to 11. That was the amendment you
It's
had.
a craps game. It's 6-11.
Now, if the other part is the hours of operation for non-athletic events is 7 to 10. Does that have to be changed then if, for a non-athletic event, if they have a that has to be at least till 11 o'clock too, right?
What was suggested by, as I understood it from Alderman Rozak, that I said we could accommodate would be a provision that said 7 to 10 unless they obtain and receive a special use permit where the Common Council could authorize additional time, a time frame, and that is allowable.
Then
That
by
would
ordinance,
be-
we can go beyond the,
That would be for the bigger events that, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good solution.
So is that an amendment that you propose?
Yeah, I'll make that amendment as stated by our city attorney to
Okay.
Part A of Section 1.
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion on that? So that any non-athletic event that needs a special use permit, temporary use, whatever you want to call it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, on this amendment.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, now we need a vote on the amended ordinance as amended. We do have a motion and a second on that, correct?
Yes.
Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Without objection, we waive the second reading. Ordinance becomes law. Next item, consider act on conditional use permit for Blue Ribbon Baseball requesting general outdoor recreation, commercial use located on Blue Ribbon Circle North. We need a motion to approve the conditional use permit.
So moved.
Second.
You want to go through the changes, or?
I think we should just highlight the 4 items of contention, Mr. Planner, and have them deal with those one at a time. First being
Do one at a time.
number,
Yeah.
number 4.
right, there's actually 5 areas that they've asked for some review by the Common Council. The first one is number 4, and that talks about the non-athletic events. Would have to come back before you, only the events that require some type of need for additional acoustical equipment or if there's an expected attendance of greater than 1,500 people. Otherwise, it's small events, let's say they're doing a wedding for 25 people or something small that does not utilize the acoustical system that is bring in much greater, less than, or anything less than 1,500 people, they would not have to come before you.
That's their proposed,
That's what they're asking for.
that's what they're asking for. That's
We're
not
asking for staff then to be.
administrative
that.
approval such as we do with, I
And the
mean,
way
right
the-
now, the Harley-Davidson special use permit, we just do administratively, right? So,
Right now, the CUP reads that any non-athletic activity would have to come before the city. Now, we could bundle a bunch of them together at, if they knew what they were, but they're
gonna change
claiming
year to year.
they don't know
Yeah.
what they are.
But, and I agree that the small ones, there's no reason to have them come to the council every time, but the larger events, I think, do have to come to the council for approval.
There are some provisions in your ordinance that give staff the leeway to say when it is a significant event. I'm thinking in terms of substantial changes in a conditional use. The staff says, that's not substantial, but it does give them some latitude and some authority. It's an easy way to deal with it, but you got to trust staff. And maybe it would be better if you want more control over it to have some standard like the number of attendees. I don't know if 1,499 is good to go with these guys and 1,500 is got to come to you, but I just throw that out as a suggestion.
Go ahead, Lou.
I'm not sure where they came up with the 1,500, but the stadium holds 2,500. I think the concern would be if you have a concert that could potentially draw 8,000 people, or, they fill up the infield or something like that. So I don't know why we wouldn't have that event hold up to the 2,500. Anything above that, which would be out of the norm for how the seating would be accommodated for, would be substantial.
You're recommending changing that number from 1,500 to 2,500.
No, I wouldn't say 2,500. Well, that's just my thought.
Well,
I shouldn't talk.
my question is,
I can't.
the stadium holds 2,500.
Sometimes you can.
So we should have some consistency in regards to what the venue.
Yeah, the number came up, that was their number. I'm not sure where they came up with that, but it's challenging for me as a zoning administrator to go, how do you know how many people are gonna be at an event? If they're selling tickets at the door for something that's open to the public, they could anticipate 1,499, but have 2,500 show up.
Right, because that's the capacity of the
Right.
stadium.
Go ahead, Matt.
Kind of like some of Stan's idea of putting some of these into control of staff, because I don't think we want little events to come back in front of us. The reason I drafted some of this in the CUP the way I did was twofold. One, when we received the application for the CUP in November, these other events were not part of the CUP request. It was brand new. We got that dropped on us on January 31st, right before the first planning commission meeting, and we had very little time to discuss what that is. The way I see it is I don't have any substantial evidence for me to vote to allow additional events when we don't even know what that is going to be. With that being said, I do want to be flexible. That's why I wanted to put in, hey, look, if they want to do 10 concerts there, they just come back for a special use permit. How big of a process is that? I mean, are we talking like months? We're talking like a $50 form or something, and then they submit? Just tell me the quick process. I mean, this isn't a.
If someone wants a temporary use permit in the city, it's a $75 fee, and it generally comes to staff, and we review it. If it's something that I feel is not just selling Christmas trees, but something a little bit bigger, an event, then they come to what's called a staff meeting. It's a daytime meeting. And then now this is another level that they would have to come to the common council, which typically temporary use permits don't do.
So I think we could put a limitation in there that they still have to submit for any event, because I think we want to have some controls over this, partly because in November, it was just baseball. And again, like I said earlier on, this is more nuanced than just I like baseball, because it's not just baseball. They're talking about a variety of other events. And at this point, we're sitting here, we have no idea how many other events or what the nature of those events are going to be. Is this going to become Waukesha's premier concert, small concert venue? I don't know. Maybe the systems will be that good in there that people want to come there, and we've got concerts going whenever there's not a baseball game. I don't anticipate that being the case, but what I would propose, and I'll throw this out before I try to make an amendment so we can hear some other comments, is anything with an anticipated numbers under 1,000 could be approved by staff. Anything more than 1,000 needs to come back for common council approval as part of the special use permit process. I think that, and, you know, in that spot, we can give some concerns to what we're gonna amend the other ordinance on, which is, you know, they can get extended hours if they need to.
Charlie?
Well, I think it's real tough to put a number on because, and I'll go back to what I said on the licenses that we approved tonight. When Harley has an event, they may have more than 1,000 people, you don't know. I mean, it's really hard to tell. What they had suggested was to have it be just concerts or musical events, to come back to the city council. Everything else could be staff approved.
Right. Because
Not the way I'm reading this. I'm reading
That's,
it a
no,
little-
not how it's reading, but that's one of the things they suggested when they were giving their comments, was just have it be concerts and musical events that need to go back to the city for approval. The rest could be staff approved.
because that's forward-facing sound and enhanced acoustical elements that we'd want to have some say on, other than normal plug-and-play kind of events that would be regulated in compliance.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I don't personally think we should, they don't have a crystal ball. They can't say how many people are gonna be coming in at a specific event. So, and I don't know, that's a hard call.
Charlie?
Well, the other thing I was gonna say is things like church or charity activities. We have church events that happen, like say, or they did happen at Olympia, and we didn't have say on that,
No.
you know? So things like that, they should just be able to do.
Okay, so what kind of motion do you want to put on here? What kind of amendment do you want to put on?
Question,
Derek,
no.
do you got?
I just want to say I agree with Charlie. I think the noise is the major factor
Yeah.
here, not the activity.
Yes.
So that if they want to enhance the acoustics, they need to come in front of, whether it be us or staff, that should happen. I'm not concerned, like I said, if they get 1,000, if they get 1,100 people there, great. It doesn't matter, as long as they're not being a nuisance, and they have to still live within their decibel range of our ordinance, of our noise ordinance.
Doesn't change. Aaron, did you have something?
Yeah, I like the idea of them just having to come to us for the music events or concerts. And when they do, wouldn't they have an estimate of potentially how many people would be coming to something like that, because they would know how many people they could serve with those events and how many tickets they'll sell, where they would limit the amount of tickets, and we would know that.
So is the line of demarcation, anytime they utilize a sound system other than their own for any event, they have to come and get a special event permit?
Yes.
One more thing, or expect to go over the capacity of the stadium. How does that sound?
Either more than 2,500 or use a alternate sound system.
Because they're gonna have to have a plan for getting people there.
Well, yeah, because if the thing is suitable for just parking and everything for 2,500 people.
Right.
You get 3,000.
Then they need to have a parking plan and all that, and how to, a busing or whatever, if they're gonna have a large event.
Similar to what Harley did when they had all off-site parking.
Correct. Which is where we got to the 2,500 when I initially.
But
I was gonna say, it's gonna be really hard for them to say how many tickets they're gonna sell unless it's approved ahead of time. You can't sell the tickets without
I know, but
having
it's-
approval, so you don't know that number.
You don't know.
It's
but
just not
you-
an
you can have
it's an
you can
unfair
have an
thing to
idea of If you're
suggest.
gonna be promoting a concert, you're gonna assume how many might be there.
Yeah.
If
You're
you're
gonna have some ideas.
You'll have some limitations.
If you're promoting
The
a concert,
onus would be on them.
correct. If you're promoting a concert with infield seating,
Or any proposed
and
event,
that
was
would
their
that
suggestion,
would
or
expand
any
your
proposed event
capacity
greater than
beyond the
50,
2,500. They would know that
But
as
you would,
it can.
they would at least know what their limitation is. And we'd be able to quantify that.
Okay, let's stay focused here. So what we need to do is on the approved athletic activities is there, the non-athletic events then would be, anything over stadium capacity of 2,500 or using the sound system needs to come in for a temporary use permit.
Using something other than their own sound system.
Yeah, alternative sound system. Is that something that we can live with? Okay, so we need a motion to make that amendment?
So moved.
Wait, what was the motion again? What do you say?
Any event that utilizes, that would be over the 2,500 capacity and utilizes a alternative sound system. And/or uses an alternative sound system.
Why
So
don't
if
we
they have
just-
a concert for 1,500 people and they got to put in,
Why don't we just use their number that they suggested in their
1,500?
letter? Why are we using the 2,500 number?
They said 1,500.
They said they'd live with 1,500, that they'd come back for, why don't we use
1,500 's
their
fine.
number?
okay,
Just use their number.
1,500 and/or alternative sound system.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay with that. I'll vote
So
for
we need a
that.
motion for that amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so that's amendment to item number 4.
Go with.
Any comments?
I apologize.
Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Yep,
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, the next one should be very short. It's the hours of operation. We just created an ordinance that made some amendments, and I think we'd want to match that to the ordinance.
I'll make an amendment to hours of operation, which will just be to extend beyond 11 o'clock. That's the only thing that needs to be amended.
Athletic events, yep.
Right. So that's an amendment that was made. Do we have a second?
second.
Discussion.
So what is,
7 to 11.
They can't go
for
beyond.
just athletic events or for everything?
That's athletic events.
Athletic
For
events,
athletic
we
events,
changed
okay.
the ordinance to say it's 10 o'clock except if they come in and get a special use permit.
So athletic events will be 11, plus there will be the option to extend them, and we can extend it for, since that was part of that ordinance, that we could extend it for inclement weather? Does that have to be part of this?
It's in here.
It's in here, okay.
Yeah, extend beyond 11 when delayed due to
When-
inclement
okay,
weather.
when
Yep.
delayed. Okay, we have a motion, and a second.
I
Call the
didn't
roll,
hear the
please.
second.
Who made the
Matt made the
I made the
motion.
Second.
Stray second.
Stray.
Oh, all right.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Next
Okay, we'll skip to item number 20. That's
So
the
number
alcohol.
noise.
Last paragraph of number 8.
8.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
It has to match
For
the
noise.
ordinance.
The
ordinance,
portion that
that's all.
says the applicant also agrees that decibel levels in neighboring residential areas will not experience intermittent or impulsive decibel levels above 55 decibels. My recommendation, my strong recommendation, is to simply strike all of that last sub-paragraph there.
Well, what about if we just do this, Stan? What about if we say, the applicant also agrees that decibel levels in neighboring residential areas will not experience intermittent or impulsive decibel levels above the levels as provided in the residential noise standard?
Absolutely, it's the law, sure.
Why do we need it if it's already in our ordinance?
Because this is commercial.
Was
So
ju-
will residential
It's
come?
originating
Well,
out of commercial.
up above, it does say, if the operations are consistent with city requirements and ordinance regulations.
we don't-
They really have to meet our ordinance regulations, which deal with commercial and residential.
That's it.
And I think you're covered.
Do we have to, so we have to amend this to take that other crap out?
Motion to strike.
Paragraph.
I'd like to make a motion to strike that last paragraph.
Okay.
Boy, they're really gonna.
Second.
These guys whatever they want.
Comments? Seeing none, motion was made to strike the last paragraph so that they have to comply with our ordinances. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Okay, Jason?
Okay, number 20 is the alcohol license. The CUP says no sales of alcohol be permitted after the 7th inning of baseball, so that's the beginning of the 8th inning. They're asking that the no sales be permitted after the 8th inning, so the beginning of the 9th inning. So there was some debate about the wording of this, so I just want everyone to be clear. We're asking no sales after the 7th inning is completed, and they're asking for no sales after the 8th inning is completed.
Go ahead.
I'd like to see this whole thing removed from the CUP. I think it's too restrictive. If anything, maybe wording that they have a responsible,
Well, you have to have that, the responsible alcohol consumption plan. I think that should be part of it.
but I don't think we should restrict to hours or innings of serving. That's not part of, that, it's already gonna be identified in their operation guide.
Okay.
And they're gonna have the ability to adjust that.
Make that motion then.
Well, yeah, you can, go ahead. I mean, Mike,
Go ahead and make the amendment.
So I'd like to amend,
Item 20.
I think
Item
what you're
20.
trying to do is strike, no sales be permitted after the 7th inning of baseball games, and sales be discontinued at reasonable times prior to the end of the other athletic events. I think that's what you're arguing for.
correct.
Okay. So we have that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and second. Discussion.
I mean, Miller Park stopped serving alcohol at the 7th inning. How is this any different? Why would you want, and look, I get that bars are open till midnight, 2:30, whatever the closing time is, 5 o'clock in Chicago, okay? We're not Chicago. It's not a bar. And I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to restrict that. At a baseball park like this, people are driving in and driving out. No question. You're not walking to your friend's house across from the bar afterwards or getting an Uber. You're going there with your families and you're driving somewhere. So if Miller Park can limit it, why can't we? Why wouldn't we want to? I just don't understand. And they said they're okay with the limitation, but they wanted it to through the 8th inning.
Okay. Tom?
Well, first of all, Miller Park's directed by the National Baseball Commissioner's Office. Second of all, these events, they're family-orientated events. You're not going to get anybody that's going to get all wacky and with your kids, because chances are most of these people are out of there by the 5th or 6th inning. Now, it's not like Miller Park where you got a bunch of 25-year-old, 30-year-old people that just got to pound them down and, to me, it's family-orientated out here.
Well, if that's all true what you said, Tom, then what's wrong with the restriction?
Well, because then they can maybe get an extra $1 or $2.
Any other comments over here? I didn't, no, okay.
Well,
Karen?
oh, go ahead.
I like the compromise of saying at the end of the 8th inning. I think that's a good compromise.
If you have that restriction on, generally what ends up happening is the consumer is going to over-purchase the number of beverages they would normally purchase because of the time restriction. So if I know at the end of the 7th inning that I'm not going to be able to buy anymore, I may buy 2 or 3 beers just to get me through the end of the game. I may artificially do that, depending on how the game's going. If you go to a bar and you stop serving at 2, you're not going to artificially tell the bar to stop serving at midnight.
Well, there is a thing called bar time.
Correct, at 2.
No, it's usually at about 1:30.
God, that's
Depends
been a
on where
long
you
time
roll.
since I've been there.
Yeah. But it's not by
what I heard-
ordinance.
from
It's
what
not
I
by,
heard.
it's not by this body telling them that they have to stop serving. And overstretching this body is,
Okay. Well, yeah, okay, there's a motion out there, so we're just discussing. Go ahead, Karen.
They're asking us for the end of the 8th. They're not even asking for the end of the 9th. So I still think the end of the 8th is a good compromise.
Okay. Tom?
In regards to that loading up at the end down there, yeah, it sounds good, but they're saying that they're going to try to restrict 2 drinks when they go to the stand.
right. It's good, they're gonna have a responsible consumption.
Right. Derek, did you have your hand up?
I did. Sounds like they might have another place to go after the game anyway and hang out.
Well, we don't know if that's going to be. open.
Maybe, but what
We
I'm
don't know.
saying is, it's not a big place. You're not putting 40,000 people on the road afterwards. Most of the people will probably be local. they could probably Uber home if they decided they had too much, but it puts the onus, I don't like controlling people or the ability to make money, so I'm gonna vote with Lou just to not have any restrictions and leave it up to them.
Any other comments?
Well, just so you know, the motion that Lou made also strikes discontinuing at reasonable times for other events as well. So if they
Athletic
have a
events.
concert,
Other athletic events.
right?
No.
Other athletic events.
The other
okay, so not
events,
the other.
that's special
That's all part of the
events, yep.
special use, okay,
Yeah.
temporary use, they're not, that's better. But why, I mean, I just don't, yeah, okay.
As
I don't get it. I mean,
function of
yeah.
our government and restricting that ability of the consumer to purchase, I don't think it's in the consumer's best interest, our community's best interest. They're gonna have a responsible consumption policy if they determine, or we see as council that there is an inordinate number of DUIs, we can ask them to address their responsible consumption policy.
How are you gonna enforce that?
Don't we get to review it in a year?
Well, that's, we'll get to that.
Last piece, that's probably gonna get taken out too. But here's the problem with changing the restriction right on the inning, is they'll have a responsible alcohol, and I'm not saying they're gonna do this, but, and I'm not trying to restrict how much money they can make necessarily, but there's no enforcement mechanism on the alcohol consumption document that you're gonna submit. I mean, are we gonna go tour, we're gonna send somebody to tour to see if they're giving and complying with that, or are we gonna hear something? I mean, how do we enforce that? This is a hard line that says, look, and I'm okay going to the 8th, but at some point prior to the game ending, you have to stop serving so that people have time to get a soda, sober up, and drive home. I think that's very reasonable, and I don't think it's outside of the bounds of, this isn't some governmental overreach, in my opinion.
Okay, I'll throw myself into this. If Alderman Stray and I go to the game and he's driving, I shouldn't be restricted as to when I have a beer. So it's up to people to do the right thing.
All the price straight, right?
Me neither.
Yeah,
So I agree with you. I don't see that we should have a restriction there.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the ordinance to say, to get rid of the seventh inning.
Strike
Strike.
the
Strike the-
third sentence of paragraph 20.
So an aye vote would remove the third sentence. Any
Right.
other questions? Seeing none, call the roll.
Bless you. Oh, I got to save that first. Okay. Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Nay.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Nay.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
I vote.
Aye, 4-4.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what Alderman Kowalski and really what Alderman Shaw said. If you're there with somebody else, I mean, it's restrictive and you have to be responsible for your own actions, so I'll vote aye. What's the next one?
The next one is the last one. It's number 29. It's 1-year review. The conditional use asks that following 1 year of operation, not 1 year from today's date, but operation, they should come back and appear before the Common Council to provide a report. We don't specify what the report says, but it says at this time, the city may discuss any complaints or concerns that the city may have received about the outdoor recreation use. Any concerns raised by the city shall then be addressed by the applicant and may result in any amendments of the CUP. They're asking that be changed to not come before the council, but to meet with staff and provide a report.
The question I have is, why do we have a time limit on this of 1 year? If there's a problem with the operation, we should be able to do that at any time. We shouldn't have to wait till a year goes by before something is done about it. And if there hasn't been any real concerns, why are we putting this 1 year review limit on it? I just don't understand it.
I guess the 1 year is to see if there's any patterns. I mean, if there's one mishap along the way, you know, but a year might show us that there's several things that there's a concern.
I know we've had review policies before for other activities, just to see how things have gone. Report back and say everything was great, we had an issue with this, we, you know, whatever it was, our attendance was better than we thought. I just think it's a good idea for a new business, this is a new type of thing that we're doing, that, yeah, they come back for the first year and look at it and say, yeah, everything went great, or no, we have to amend this, or we have to change that. I think it's just good policy that we have them come back for the first year. Go ahead.
Yeah, with, Charlie, with or without this condition in the CUP, if anytime they violate the conditions of the CUP, we could revoke the CUP
Yes.
right then and there. So, what this gives us is an opportunity, and why council has to look at it is because only council can change the CUP conditions. Staff can't change those conditions without our approval. So if there's, like Jason said, some type of, you know, hey, we've gotten 15 noise complaints over, 20 noise complaints over last year, we need to work on this decibel level. It gives us a chance to just review that with them and say, what can you do to make that change and do that? It's just a nice little, like the mayor said, you know, first time we've ever done anything like this in the city, it should be done right.
Yeah, and I think it's a good opportunity for them too, to come to us and show us how good they did.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, to say, yeah, this is a great thing, we plan on many more events next year and go from there.
It's a great way to communicate with us.
No, I just see that we're going to be reviewing this as it goes along. Every time they have an event and stuff out there, it's going to be reviewed. I don't see where you put this 1-year time limit on. Then what happens after 1 year? Then are there no other, you know, no other reviews?
That's what it
The
says.
review is in there all the time because there is a conditional use permit. I don't think this needs to be there.
Well, you make a motion to remove it.
I will make a motion to remove item 29.
We have a second. Any no second?
Second.
You did second it, okay.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Derek.
I think it's a good idea to have them come back and review it, because they may need additional things. They're gonna have one full year revenue stream, and they'll see how they're doing, and they might have other ideas that they wanna propose to us. It'd be good for everybody.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay. Lou, did you have something? No?
I just thought it'd be good to have it
Okay.
on the table and discuss, and I'm not necessarily gonna approve.
So we have a motion to remove item 29. Any other comments? Seeing none, call the roll.
Alderman Shaw?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Nay.
Alderman Zwart?
Nay.
Alderman Stray?
Nay.
Alderman Kavieski?
Nay.
Alderman Rogers?
Nay.
Alderman Rozak?
Nay.
Okay, so we went through, that's all the conditions?
Looks like it.
Yes.
Any other, okay, is there anything else that anybody would like to discuss? I know we've gone through this a number of times. We've all gone through the conditions. I think we're set. We have a motion and a second on the amended conditional use permit, correct?
Correct.
Other discussion, call the roll.
Alderman Shaw?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Zwart?
Aye.
Alderman Stray?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Rogers?
Aye.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Next item, consider act on memorandum of modifications and variance for the Southwest Business Park at Pabst Farms Declaration of Development Standards and protective covenants. We need a motion to act on the memorandum modifications.
So moved.
Second?
Go ahead. Who's going to do
I
that?
can give a brief overview. In 2004, the city adopted some covenants and restrictions for the business park down in the Pabst Farms. All the businesses had to conform with these. This business that's coming in did not conform, so one way of doing it was to amend the covenants and restrictions for this specific lot. It's not for the covenants and restrictions of the entire park. It's just for some specific things. So the Pabst Farms attorney went through it. They decided there was some language that they needed to amend. We don't generally get involved in conditions and restrictions. It's more of a private thing, but the way this one was worded is that the city must review the initial one as well as any amendment to the document. So I know our legal attorney has reviewed it as well, and we're in agreement with the memorandum of modifications and variances for this.
You have any comments on it, Stan?
Well, I'm glad I'm a legal attorney as opposed to an illegal attorney, but, no, I mean, the way it was set up was, we were just, an approving entity. I don't know why it was set up that way. I don't like having the city involved in private restrictions, but, I don't think that the city should be standing in the way of private property owners in terms of their putting restrictions or changing restrictions on their own property. Has no impact on the city whatsoever. You've got your stuff in the conditional use permit you just issued.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is Attorney O'Neill still here? You still here? Didn't you say that the folks that you represent have come to agreement on these, so there's really no issue? On these changes? Okay, and okay, good.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we have motion and second, call the roll.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwark.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, next item is consider act and decision of resolution of necessity, resolution number 19-R 2832. We need a motion to act on the rescission.
Make a motion to act on the rescission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
You asked me to kill the potential acquisition of the beach parking property. This kills it.
Okay, comments, go ahead.
I'd like you to keep this alive. I think we need to know what the actual cost is associated with the acquisition of this property. And then I think we need to go to the surrounding municipalities associated with Lac La Belle, being the village of Lac La Belle and the town of Oconomowoc, to participate in the acquisition, the final acquisition, so we can proceed with dealing with our public launch. Without, if you kill this resolution of necessity, we don't get to that number. We can't negotiate with the municipalities that should be sharing in the costs associated with dealing with our public launch. So for that reason, I would ask council to continue to keep the resolution of necessity alive, and allow for final negotiation with a price, so we can move this forward and get this done.
Go ahead, Derek.
After our meeting, thinking about it, it might be cheaper to move the band shell to pick up extra parking. I'm serious. We might want to look into what it would cost to move that a ways.
The band shell?
I don't know if you can do it, or I think you can move anything if you want to.
That's on the registry, you can't move that.
Can't move it, or you can't get rid of it? Not move it in, not
It
slide
may
it
fall
over.
down pretty quick, but besides that.
I'm just saying, when you're talking about buying properties, it gets very expensive quickly.
No, that's up to the next council to decide that. but
I know.
that's not
I'm
something
just
I would
saying
ever
it's an
take
idea.
up.
You gotta think outside the box sometimes.
Well,
that's
that's
all.
way outside.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I agree, it could be expensive, and but I do think that we need to know what that cost is, so we can negotiate with the town and with the village, because without accommodating for that vehicle and trailer parking, we're gonna be restricted to how we can deal with that launch. And I'd rather close the launch and force them to do access to that lake than bear the full cost of moving a band shell or buying that lot and paving it over, or whatever those options are to move forward solely. This is a large lake that is surrounded by 3 municipalities, and right now, we're looking at covering the full cost associated with parking and the launch improvements that are required to maintain it safely and to access the lake, and I don't think that's where we should be.
Andy?
I actually agree with Lou. I think there's 3 parties involved in this launch, and although I understand it's in need of help, I think trying to find out and/or making some other municipalities commit to helping this become better is smart. It's not solely ours. Yes, it's on our property, I guess you would say, but ultimately, I gotta believe that more non-city of Oconomowoc residents live on Lac La Belle than do. So there's an aspect there that I think is a true statement. I believe that we should continue to move forward, with putting pressure on Village of Lac LaBelle and Town of Oconomowoc with respect to how it's gonna get paid for. And I don't think it's a foolish thing to at least walk through and see what comes of it.
Shirley?
Well, I think the launch could be repaired and the parking taken care of for the boat trailers and stuff with just a couple on the street and the rest in what's now the existing parking lot or that area where the community center used to be. But what we don't have then is any parking for the beach. And that's basically what this was going to be, was beach parking. And Stan, I guess the question I have is what happens is if we choose not to act on this tonight,
Then I'm gonna go forward with negotiations with the property owner. I'm gonna give him the appraisal, and I'm gonna give him his rights letter and tell him he can go out on our dime and get his own appraisal.
we have any idea what that cost on our dime is?
Well,
you
it's
hate to s-
probably $5,000-6,000 for him to get an appraisal. It's gonna be, believe me, half again as high as what you saw from us.
Then we can enter in negotiation based on a price and let the town and the village know where we're at and
You
try
can
to.
do that, but, you know, you start entering into negotiations, I can guarantee you that he's gonna want an answer way before you get something done with those other two municipalities. You're gonna have to pull the trigger at some point. I was directed to kill it.
I know. But again, we have limited options to accommodate for the parking that's required around there. And if you force street parking in that area, you're gonna force that street parking for boat and trailer into the residential area around there. That's not necessarily fair to that area. And we can accommodate for it with this particular project.
We can always do another resolution of necessity 6 months from now.
Yep.
So, you know,
The state.
if we don't rescind this now, we have to start negotiations with him, which puts us behind the 8 ball. We have to actually make an offer and do those things, potentially, without having any idea where the town and the village are on any of those issues. And if, you know, we decide 6 months from now, we want to try this again, we can just do it again. So.
Shirley?
Well, and as the lot stands right now, there is no real trailer parking down there during the swim season. There's some times outside of the swim season when you can park a trailer down there, but otherwise you don't have any trailer parking there right now at all.
It's a bad situation.
Right, but we can fix the trailer parking with the property that we have. We really don't need the one across the street that was just strictly for car parking.
Andy?
I guess what I'm asking is, what's the better protocol to try to get these other municipalities involved first? Instead of being stuck buying a $400,000 or $500,000 piece of property and then trying to.
You're gonna ask Sarah that,
More than
because we try to work with both village.
And I don't know, that's
and
why
the
I'm
town.
asking.
Have no incentive.
They have no incentive, no desire to do anything.
We've had conversations in general. There's, you know, they haven't, you know, they would like to see the boat launch
But I don't want to pay for it.
improved, but there's no,
Incentive for that.
yeah, incentive for them to participate necessarily. There's no, we don't have any,
So ultimately, it's a fart in the wind.
Yep.
Well,
I don't think you need.
It's a legal term.
Yeah.
Well, what else do you say? I mean, it is what it is.
Yep.
They essentially don't want to play in the sandbox. Yeah, they'd love it, but they're
Let's
not
cut
paying
this
for it.
out.
But I'm saying we shouldn't have to. That's, okay.
That's why it's not been fixed.
My question's been answered.
That's why it's never been
Perfect.
fixed. Go ahead, Derek.
You know, the appraisal will be no good in 6 months. We'll have to do another one, right? So if you want to see what it's going to cost, you're going to have to let them go out and get a number. But it's going to be big, and I'll bet you guys all a buck that nobody's going to want to stomach the cost of doing
You
it.
don't wanna stomach the cost
I
right
won't be
now.
here anyway. I know, that's what I'm saying.
So it's gonna be higher, so why would you wanna stomach it then?
I'm just saying, if you want to see what it is, you're gonna have to give them the opportunity to go get an
And it
appraisal.
might give you an opportunity to do some talking to the town and the village and see if they're actually interested.
Right,
So
'cause-
really what we have is we have.
Appraisal cost is sunk and we'll have to do it again
Yeah,
if we
I mean-
decided to
I
do it
mean,
again.
if you don't want to rescind this, vote no.
I don't think you need the property to have the conversations with
No, you can
with
talk
the
to the
town
village of the
about the
town.
boat launch, the other rest of the boat
But you
launch,
can
but
still do the
it's an
negotiation.
element of it.
You can still do, you can negotiate, well, everybody knows that what it is now, but you can negotiate with them and say, we have an opportunity to do this. Would you be interested in working with it? So.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because I think the leverage that we have that we haven't utilized is we don't have to host the launch.
That's your call as the council if
Right.
you want to go there. Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. A no vote means that it's still in effect, and then the attorney would start negotiations. Call the roll.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Nay.
Alderman Kavieski.
Nay.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay. So work on the rescission. Staff reports?
You can sign it.
Nothing this evening.
Reports and comments from Alderman? Go ahead.
It's been a pretty tough 3 weeks here for us, guys and gals, and it was well worth it because we've learned a lot of stuff like this that I hurt my eyes about the first half of these up here. But it was good for all the town of, village of Summit to do all this stuff. A lot of really good, interesting comments from the guys over here. You guys have done a great job. You've done your homework. Benny, you forgot a couple of things as far as people that were drafted. George Shonath, who his band over here knows him very well, because my dad was a scout and he signed him up. And you forgot that I also was drafted by the Army.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it wasn't by the majors.
County Council, right, yeah. Good. Yep.
Go ahead, Lou.
I'd just like to say thank you to several of the downtown restaurants and bars and cafes for participating in a fundraiser that occurred this past Tuesday that was hosted at Seal Tank. We raised over $3,000 to provide training for therapy dogs for Western Lakes Fire District. Those dogs will be utilized for the firefighters, the PD, the American Legion, and the VFW when that program is in place. And with that money raised, that program is underway.
Good. Any other comments? Go ahead.
I just want to say, you know, there's been a lot of nasty rhetoric back and forth between the two pros and cons. And it really disappointed me and made me sad because I just don't think that's who we are as Oconomowoc. I think in the last couple weeks, things toned down a little bit, but I hope that everybody can rally around this project now. I think it's a good thing for our community. And I'm trusting that Blue Ribbon Baseball will be a good neighbor to everyone around them.
Any other comments?
One
Go
real
ahead.
quick one. Yeah, thanks, Lou, for doing that. I was up there and you know, talked to the guys at my veterans groups, and they were really thankful for that, because anytime you have service dogs, the chances are, you know, we have horrible suicide rates every day, and all those veterans, and that makes a big thing. But the guys can go out and walk around with the dogs and stuff, so.
Okay. Seeing no more reports or comments from the mayor, nothing from me tonight. We are going into closed session per Wisconsin Stats 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for governmental body who is rendering oral or written activity advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The Waterview condominiums. We need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis. Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, we're in closed session. Let's take about a 5-minute break.